Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Would you please rise for a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I guess I better put my glasses on. All right. First thing that we have is our public input. And Mr. Yoakum, you're the first and only one, but we still can only give you 3 now.
Oh, you can't take all the other minutes that people would have used?
Well, it looks like this might go to 9 o'clock as it is.
Okay. Yeah, just very quickly, one small thing is item 3.02. You're going to talk about school improvement plans. And periodically, I've come up here and said every year you go through this. And you have some schools, and of course, the schools' ranking has increased a lot. And so this isn't as big an issue, but my view is that the bottom 5 schools, those principals should come here quarterly to report progress on their school improvement program and how they're improving it, or any other kind of criteria you set, because education's your biggest expectation, and yet we're going to have financial presentations, and you go through budget presentations. But I haven't seen one of those since going probably 6, 8 years ago, when they did once bring in several principals to explain that. And of course, but then there was no follow-up to see if they even followed up on some of the things that I questioned at that time. I think probably the standards are a lot different now, but I would still encourage you to have that so that there's some public expectation that poor performing schools can come in and explain the reasons that it may not be the school's fault. It could be external issues, and that should be part of the dialogue. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. First item on our under topics is our 3.01, the Facilitron Facility Usage Online Web-Based Scheduling System. Mr. Ritter.
Thank you. I have with me several people from Facilitron, which is an online facility use scheduling system. We have Trent Allen and Rachel Allen. And this is a system that we looked at several months ago. I organized a focus group with administrators representing 3 high schools, a middle school, an elementary school, our district athletic director, and Mr. Carr, our chief of operations. And so we all looked at the program, had a lot of in-depth discussion, and we voted unanimously to proceed with it. So we wanted to give you all a brief overview of the system, and with that, I will turn it over to Trent.
All right. Yes, I'm Trent. This is Rhonda. I'm the CMO at Facilitron, and she is the senior account manager, including the districts in Florida that we're already working with. So she's my expert for any of your tougher questions. But so I just want to give you a little bit of an overview. We're Facilitron. We're a California-based company, and we work with about probably over 3,000 schools now, helping them create, develop, and manage what we call facility use programs. Let's see, I have the clicker, don't I? So, a quick overview. The challenges that almost every district has is visibility into what's going on at their different the different schools, the facility use at different schools, gyms, classrooms, fields. There's really, the district struggles to see what's going on, to know what's going on. What there are calendars like Outlook calendars and Google calendars that are fragmented across the district that the different schools might use to schedule the admin for athletics schedules the gym, and really they're all fragmented, and sometimes even a school themselves can't see what's going on at their own school. And certainly not across schools, and the district also has no visibility. There's also virtually no system or process in place for scheduling events that on a district-wide level, and there's also no system I think in your case, an antiquated system. You guys are still pen and paper, right?
We are.
Pen and paper for for how the community requests to use school facilities. And then, therefore, there's no data being collected really about how the facilities are being utilized, and ultimately what that comes down to is giving the district an understanding between what the costs are and how much you're using it and what the costs are to use each facility, particularly when outside groups are using the facilities and it's outside of the normal school budget to run the facilities. So what we do is we come in and create a catalog of all district facilities. We list every classroom, field, gym, theater, auditorium, cafeteria, that sort of thing across the district at every school. We create this catalog, and then from that we're able to create a sort of a master calendar that the district can have visibility into all the events going on, and each school can have visibility inside their own school of all the events going on. And then we create a process for how things are scheduled at each school, and that includes the athletic department putting their basketball practices and football practices on the schedule, but also a system for when the drama teacher is wanting to schedule the auditorium and things that might have to be approved by someone else in the school. And then importantly, also a community portal. We create that, so it's a different system for how the community comes in to make requests. And I'll show you that in a minute. And so what we do with all that is we're able to aggregate a bunch of data that unlocks some metrics that become valuable for how the district is using their facilities and how they can make changes to policy informed by data. So this is a powerful system. We consider it to have two sides to it. At front end, the community request portal, and a back end, which is the district control center. So on the front end, the community portal is a place where the community can come and search all district facilities or at specific schools, and we do Seminole County next door, so that's why we use them as an example. But you can come here and search for gyms and see search results, see where they're located around the district, and choose a particular place and see what the pricing is and what the availability is based on those internal and external calendars that we're creating, and so that a person can come in and configure a request, and as they're doing it, they can see what the cost should be depending on what kind of group they are, what other fees like utilities or custodial fees that might be involved that are part of district policy. So that's one powerful thing. We're able to program the system with basically district policy for costs that have been approved already. And then on the back end, there is a calendar system where these requests, whether they're internal or they're by the community, the requests come in to this master calendar. The district, and in this case, Lauren, who manages this, can see all the activities going on, and with particular the community requests that she manages, she can look at those and this is really small, but this is a detailed page of a reservation. There's all kind of information here that will help Lauren manage this request. This is an approved one, so there's a permit, there's insurance information, payment information, and all the communications that around that reservation.
And the renters will be able to upload their insurance. We'll verify it based on your district policy. If it's not correct, we'll go back to the renter until it is correct. They're also able to submit payment directly online. Any major credit card, e-check, PayPal, or they can still mail a physical check in. So any refunding that needs to happen, that's all going to be handled through us. So it's going to cut down on, the district having to do all that and keep track of it. And then, of course, you have full reporting on any transactions that happen as well.
So the financial part of it then is going to come through you?
It will. Mm-hmm.
So you take a cut. That's how you get paid.
Right.
Okay.
We take a small percentage
wondering,
of only
like,
the
why
rental
everything is
income.
free.
Any of your internal usage or community groups that aren't charged a fee, we take no money from those whatsoever. But we will still make sure that community group has a valid certificate of insurance on file.
And what is your cut?
It's between 8 to 12%. So it starts at 12%, and then every $500 it drops a percentage. You know, we do all of the cataloging, all of the photos, all the training for your school administrators and community at zero cost out of your pocket.
What do you estimate our district is worth to you?
Pardon?
What do you estimate that our district is worth to you?
I think I can speak to that. I reviewed what we've collected so far this year, and our fee schedule compared to other fee schedules with neighboring counties, and ours is considerably lower. And that's one benefit that we can get from this, is we can, after we've fully implemented, we can get that data back to see how what we're collecting actually compares to our costs. But so far, this fiscal year, we've only collected about $7,500.
So 7.
But we
So
really
what do
don't
you-
have a good tracking mechanism.
Are you here for $7,000?
Well, actually, here's the thing, most
Wait,
of our
did I-
processes are automated.
Oh, it's only 7,500?
But think about this. just
So why are you here?
in contrast, by contrast, Seminole County has been with us 7 months. They're already close to $1 million in revenue. And they couldn't answer
And
the question
bookings.
to me, how much are you guys doing to begin with? They had no idea.
So what do you
So,
estimate
look,
us?
Well, that's a really great question.
I know
So
you've done it.
We're gonna double your rental easily when we come in and streamline the processes. We're gonna make sure that groups are being charged your board policy rates, because right now with pen and paper, people are having to enter that manually. So once we take you onto our system, we can assign them to the rate group that you want them in, because I'm sure you have different rates for different renters. It's automatically, once we assign them a rate group, we'll start calculating those fees for them based on that rate group. So all of your renters will be
But listen,
fairly and equitably treated.
Our goal is to try to help the district go from not knowing what's going on to knowing what's going on. And that's a process that, if you only have $7,500 in rentals, that means a lot of people are using the district facilities for free, and the district is subsidizing whatever group that is. And there's all kind of potential liabilities with that when you have this group being charged and this group not being charged, or how, right now, we see this everywhere. There's all these historical relationships between coaches or whatever, but look, we're not trying to just ferret out the abuses of the system. We're trying to help you understand how many hours the buildings are being used and what is the cost to the district. Like, we do a cost analysis. Again, everything we do is never something that you pay us for. It's all based on the service fees that are generated from these external rentals. So, yes, if that's all you're doing, $7,500, we could be in,
So much more than that.
And that is just over a couple of months, though.
Right. Okay, so
But I'm so-
I was going to ask.
I just, I want you
the
to
interests
answer
are
my
aligned.
question,
The
though.
district's interests
Sure.
and our interests are aligned.
What is our interest? We are looking to
What do you
have essentially-
estimate that you would make?
How much?
What is, when you guys decided to come and
Well, hold on,
pitch
hold
us,
on.
what did you
Yeah.
estimate?
Lauren, last year, what did we do last year in rentals?
I
And that would let them
cannot
know
tell
what their
you.
estimate is.
I don't know that, because I would
Okay.
have to go
But
through
they
and
know.
manually add up
No, they
every
don't.
check
We'll
that we
know once
receive.
we have all of your utilization data in the system.
Right.
We've got different reports where you can look at the utilization based on which fields are being used, classrooms are being used, what your revenue bookings are. We even have where it comes in as your actual, what your policy is, versus what you've adjusted that reservation to. So you're gonna have all of this data and oversight available to you that you can review and then make decisions on, are we charging enough for these rentals? Are we getting our costs back? Or are we subsidizing community groups within our district?
Well, are
And
we
how much?
charging
And how much?
nonprofits?
So that you can choose to do that or not.
Are we charging nonprofits?
We do. We have two fee schedules, one for nonprofits and one for profit.
Okay,
So we have a community and a commercial fee
because
schedule.
we probably have quite a bit of that usage
We
throughout the
do. We
district.
still charge nonprofits. It's just a lower rate, but we
Right.
have a lot of in-kind contributions.
So throughout the year, that could accumulate to make it where it could be worth their while.
Well,
It could, but I can tell you the big benefit that I see is it would relieve a lot of administrative burden on the school level, because the AP or the principal or whoever at that facility is assigned facility usage is constantly chasing down the paperwork and the insurance certificate and coordinating back and forth, and this would relieve that burden from them.
Okay, relieving that burden from them on that part, but they would still be in the loop as far as their facility,
Absolutely.
knowing what's coming in to
They
there.
would have full access.
Well, I
to
mean,
the
not full
system.
access, but they would be alerted if someone went online and said, hey, I've,
They would still have to approve at the school level.
okay, that's what I'm looking
But they
for.
wouldn't have to be chasing down the paperwork.
Right, okay.
So this program doesn't allow you, like at a hotel where it has blackouts, where they're all full. Does it?
It would.
Because you'd want to finish the transaction in one step, I would think. Like you would book it, if it's open, you would book it.
Exactly.
You'd pay for it and call it a day.
Yep.
So what is this approval thing that's going on? So there's another step before you're
Yes,
like
when the
approved?
request comes in, it's simply a request with an estimated amount of fees. And so the district gets those requests, and it may, whatever your process is, the system's flexible. A lot of times, the school, of course, has a certain amount of pre-approval, and then what's most effective is when the district has the final approval. So that process can still go on. They can check, and make sure that the facility's available at the school level. Then it gets passed on to Lauren's group, who can approve or decline the reservation based on.
But I thought you said they paid for it when they're making the reservation. They're paying for the insurance and they're paying.
Actually, what they can do is they don't have to pay right when the reservation is placed. Once it's approved, that's when our automated system takes over. We send out invoices and advise them that we need their insurance uploaded. So you can set X number of days before the event. If those items haven't been completed, we can then go back and say, this renter has not completed these, and then you have the option of declining the request or letting it go forward. So again, all of this is in your control. We don't approve or decline any reservations. We're following your board policy and your mandates. So again, this is
But
however
even
you
that
set it up.
system is very valuable in the sense that the district probably has policies on like how many days in advance things should be done, but because there's really no system that it gives Lauren or the district visibility into it, those, really you don't know if those policies are being enforced or if they're even effective. Maybe they're not the right policy. So, I mean, these are all the things that we help districts do with basically our expertise.
But how do you deal with a philosophy that these facilities are owned by the public, and therefore it shouldn't be a profit center, in my opinion, the use of it?
No, but we shouldn't be losing money.
Exactly. No. So if our fees are lower than other districts, maybe it's because of our philosophy of how we feel about our taxpayers.
Right.
They're paying for. And so we would have to adjust to pay whatever your fee is, which so far I'm pretty keen on it, but whatever fee would have to be added to
Yes, in
some
fact,
cost.
In
Some
fact,
cost.
you can
right.
pass the fee you can pass the service fee on to the renter. We have a choice. You can either absorb the fee or we can pass it on to.
Well, no, we definitely have to pass it on, because the whole idea is that
Because
it's
you're-
not
yeah.
losing anything.
You're passing it on in.
Right.
in
But
many respects.
would it make more sense if you just had a fee stated, like it's a certain amount that we're going to give you guys, and
Well,
like it's a line item, just like the insurance. You got to pay so much for insurance, so much for the convenience fee.
right, like a licensing fee. That's not our business model, because the advantage of our business model is the alignment in interests. And also that we have customer support people that are helping your renters. We have the account managers who are working with Lauren to help you analyze the data so that you can understand. So,
But you have to have an idea what the transaction cost is, right? What does it cost you to do what you just said per transaction, per rental?
per rental,
Yeah. You don't have a feel for it?
I don't know. But here's the thing. What we want to try to help you do is figure out how much is it costing you to let any group use your buildings. And then you make the decision on if, most districts are subsidizing groups, no doubt about it. And they have the philosophy of helping, the public use their own buildings. But when the school budgets are essentially subsidizing it, then, when you're having teacher strikes and whatever else is going on politically and
We're not
everything,
California.
right? I mean, this is trying to give you information to make decisions on. That's what we do.
Right.
You're making a decision, but you're here for profit.
Right.
And,
Well, of
right?
course, they're a company.
So the notion that you could come in and offer these services based on a rental schedule of $7,500, you're getting 12% of it, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm trying to be fair to you. So if you have a transactional fee, that regardless of what we charge, you're handling the booking, right? So if we're doing it for free, if we're giving the facility for free, you still have a transaction cost to it.
No, our transaction
No,
costs.
not, I'm talking about internally you do.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you're not
Bingo.
charging us, but you're technically, because
You're
you
managing
are-
the whole system.
Right.
You're managing
managing
it,
the
you
whole
still have an
Think about
interest
this,
in
on
it.
our system, probably 80 to 90% of the reservations on our platform are internal reservations. So they don't, of course, don't have any fees, so we're supporting the entire thing. So if a teacher is calling up saying, hey, I don't know how to make a request for the auditorium or whatever, that, we're still supporting and helping those.
Is our assumption that that teacher, if they're making a request, is going to have the janitorial costs and those kind of things that are a cost?
Typically, that would be during the day, though.
Be during the
That's
school
what-
day.
I thought you said maybe after hours.
But he's even saying
Are you
during the
booking
school
during the
day,
day?
right?
During the school day,
So if I would
oh.
as a teacher,
After
if I
school.
want to go to the auditorium tomorrow.
You're gonna
and I
put
don't
it
know-
in
I'm
there.
gonna put it in the system, but it's not gonna cost, they're not gonna make any money off of
I
managing
thought,
my request.
I thought we were talking about after.
Well, there will be some events
Yes,
after
we are.
school. I'm
Yes.
hosting a
Yes, we
science
are.
fair, and I
Yes,
need the
we are.
cafeteria, I need the third grade wing, I need this, blah, blah,
That
blah,
we
blah.
get-
And that would
those
be no
districts,
cost,
when they
and
come
they
on the
would make
platform,
money.
our goal is to first get the after-school and weekend stuff
Right,
on the platform first.
because technically, we have somebody here that takes care of this area here pretty much already. So we're just doing it more in the county-wide. But I missed out on some of your conversation, and I caught it just then, about even our internal, on our daily in-school time, they would come through there.
They can if they want. And that is, if you have a multi-purpose room or a theater and you have different teachers who access that,
Right.
they could schedule that on the calendar so that everyone knows who's actually utilizing the facility at that time.
Right.
And the great thing about entering your internal and external schedules is that if there is some type of an emergency situation, you have a tornado or a gas leak or anything else, you should be able to, at a district level, log in and see who's where on that campus, in what room, and essentially how many people are supposed to be at that event. And again, that's something that we think is an extremely valuable thing to be able to go in and see.
Or even more simply,
Coordinate
when
with
you're
your
driving by
administrator.
a school and the gym lights are on at 9:30 and you're going, who's in there right
True.
now?
Yeah.
The district right now doesn't have a way to know.
Do you have any districts of similar
Oh,
size?
yeah, we stop.
yes.
We,
We have,
oh my
we're,
gosh.
we're doing 5 districts in Florida right now: Lee County, Seminole County, Manatee, Polk,
Sarasota.
and Sarasota County.
Okay, so Manatee's similar size.
And then we have,
Yeah, I'm actually training the Manatee principals on Tuesday of next week. They are just going live with us. We have everything in their system during the transition, so they're just now getting started.
What were they taking in fees, and what do you expect them to take in fees next year?
That is a really great question, so I can actually pull the data up and take
Yeah,
a look. I
that'd
don't
be
know it
great.
right off the top of my head, but I can tell you how many current bookings we have for them and how many we have for Seminole.
So again, I think part of the goal is with the increased visibility and the ease with the public, obviously the volume of rentals we would anticipate that to increase because of the visibility and the ease
How,
versus chasing down a paper application, going to the school, getting it signed, getting it to the district.
how do you handle, like, let's say, last season, there was a ball team that was renting the South Lake High School baseball fields, and if there's a rain, like, so if the fields can't be used or if they need to be canceled, how do they manage that?
The renter has a way to go online, leave comments on the reservation details page that he was showing you earlier, just saying, hey, we were rained out today. We can then remove that date and issue a credit, or just remove the fees and issue a credit directly to that renter in real time based on however they paid us. So again, it's really, really easy transaction-wise. Any changes that are made on a reservation as well are tracked and logged. You'll see exactly who made the change in the history and what they did. So everything is just completely
You're
visible
taking the
to you.
human element kind of out of it. So if we go back to that refund piece, there's nobody at the school, like the principal doesn't have to approve that transaction because it's already been paid for and approved and it's canceled, so they go and fill the paperwork out and you guys issue the credit back or the
Right.
refund or whatever.
We can do that, but we will, again, if you have a certain rain-out policy, we're gonna follow that policy.
sure.
We're not just gonna remove dates based off of what the renter says.
Right.
It will be something that we do coordinate via your policy or directly with the school if need be.
I'm just going back to Lauren, I think it was the
Yeah.
AP that was handling that situation, so that would take that AP time element out of that piece of the transaction or the rental agreement or whatever.
Yeah, it would, or the bookkeeper.
Right, whoever's in charge of
It would
facilities.
certainly streamline the process.
Does this help with like internal funds, like being able to track internal funds?
Yes, because right now we would have difficulty if you asked me, like you did, how much did we collect last year? I could, spend about 4 or 5 hours digging up the information, but we would be able to just run a quick report and show how much we've collected.
So when a facility is rented, who gets that money? Does the district get that, or does the school get that?
It comes here to the district, it comes through my department, and we, for the rental fees, 50% goes back to the school, 50% goes to the general fund to cover the overhead costs, the electricity, air conditioning.
I guess I'm just
And
thinking.
12% is going to be going to them. So 12 off the top for them, and then you split the balance.
Keep in mind, though, our fees right now, and and this is why we need some assistance in evaluating, like for a classroom, for a community member, $8 an hour. A cafeteria is $15 an hour. It's very low compared to a football field, I think is 30 for commercial.
And how much is like other counties?
400, I don't know. Considerably more.
Well,
I
our
think
community members
our
are gonna,
auditorium might be $25 an hour, and I think Seminoles is
So I can go rent some football fields and go play
200
ball with my
maybe, or
son, huh?
150.
So,
For an hour.
yeah, that's right. Go play for an hour, kick some field goals.
In response to your question about bookings, so we pulled July events and August events, which we've billed renters for Manatee County. So again, this is something that you would have access to. It's an executive summary, and it lives at the district level where you can go in and review this. It's going to give you a breakdown of any approved reservations, declined, canceled, and pending. So they've had a total of 250,000 bookings entered into our system. Again, these could be for events that are, well, it could be for some events that are approved that will be coming up in the.
But in the last 2 months, they've had $250,000.
That's what we have
250,000 bookings, not dollars.
inputted into the system. Again, they're just going live and just getting trained. So we're taking this from the data that they've provided us and inputting that. So again, you can even look at each school and see what's been booked.
So that would include the school booking the football fields on Friday night. That would include
No.
So that is
because schools are
outside
not
community use.
charged for internal usage now.
so how
No,
much?
but the booking
But I
of
thought
it
you
she's
said that was
talking about.
bookings.
Well,
not-
total dollar amount booking.
It's 250,000.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where I thought you meant 250,000 books. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I heard 250,000 bookings too.
Okay,
So
good.
it's
So
$250,000 worth
total
of bookings in,
Right.
and we had 7,000. So
Well,
we're
that's-
worth a
that's-
lot.
That's just in the last couple of months, though, this fiscal year.
Right.
So far.
Okay, so basically, this is worth a lot.
So where it gets its worth is right now. So a community group wants to use a facility. They go to the principal. Principal says, "Oh yeah, I like that community group. I'm going to kind of wheel and deal a little bit, right?" And so they might say, "You don't need to pay for this or for that or blah 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 blah."
A lot of them, it's
Right.
like, we'll pull weeds in your flower garden if you let us use the football field. And we see a lot of it in-kind contributions for community members,
All right.
particularly when it's involving our students for, youth leagues and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of in-kind.
So does this take out that wheeling and dealing negotiations that happen right now?
We will still, because our policy allows for an in-kind contribution, we would still follow our board policy. Just over time, we would gather enough information so that we could really analyze what.
Okay.
So
The
if
way-
they're,
we're
if
subsidizing
they're doing an in-kind donation, they would still go through and book.
They would.
Yes, they would. And then you can, if they are purchasing equipment, they can upload the purchase order, it can get approved, fees can be removed from the reservation, however you want to do it. But eventually, in 6 months, once we have all of your data in the system, we can do a cost analysis for you. You'll provide us with some data that we need to go in and input a formula that was created by the Berkeley University for us, and we can plug those numbers in, and you'll be able to see in real time your utilization data, where it will show what you actually charge versus what it actually cost you to operate that facility during that amount of time. So you'll be able to see if those in-kind donations are actually worth it.
And this would expedite where I sent you, and I called and told them they need to go to South Lake, and that was the Christian athletes that wanted to utilize the football field at South Lake. They would just be able to go online and go through
Absolutely.
and make it easier on your office as well.
It would certainly streamline everything.
So is there a transference fee or a usage fee for an in-kind donation?
No.
No cost
We
on
would
that.
follow our policy. There would be no dollars collected, so they would not take a percentage.
If there's no fee, they get no percentage.
Yes.
So in addition to, let's say I go online, I book a football field for a couple hours to go play some ball with my son, because apparently it's pretty inexpensive to do so. I pay online with my credit card. Is there a credit card processing fee in addition to the 8 or 10%, 8 or 12% I'm giving to you? What's the credit card processing fee?
So it's the standard 3%.
3%.
You can choose to absorb that or pass that back to the renter. They also have an option of using an e-check, which is only 50 cents per transaction, which is, again, our direct cost for our person that we partner with to provide that
PayPal,
service.
which can
Or
be
they
no
can use
cost.
PayPal.
Or they can send
Or they
a
can
hard
mail a check.
Or
which
they
is
can
the
still
only
mail a
way we
check
accept
in.
it. If they
Mail a
use-
check to who? To you?
To us.
That's correct. And again, we'll be managing all that. We've got reports here where you can log in at any point in time and see what's been collected and distributed. And again, you even have the ability to go into all of these, as I talked with you before about policy versus what it actually ended up being. You can even dive into each reservation and pull those up directly. So again, we're going to provide you with a lot of oversight. And we'll teach you how to use it and anyone else that needs to know how. And also just train your schools. Once you get in here and start doing this, it's really, really easy for them to, at the school level, do their pre-approvals, enter their internal schedules. It's nothing complicated, really.
So is there another step then? There's another process for the school, individual school to enter that they've accepted it?
So
Is everybody using that same program? Every school will have it?
Every school would have it. That's just for their own internal usage. Like the football team wants to reserve, we're having these home games. They would go in and block the field off.
And it
for
blocks
their
it
whole
out
season.
on
And it
their
would block it
program.
off, and the public would know it's not available to rent.
And then as soon as you take a reservation, like Mark, he wants to play football at South Lake, so he's now blocked 2 hours at South Lake football field. It's going to show up at the administrator?
Right, so once a request is submitted, an email automatically goes out notifying the renter that they've submitted a request. It goes to the school, the district, and Facilitron.
And who responds to it?
The pre-approver at the school site, if you're having them pre-approved, they'll log into their dashboard. They'll see waiting for me, pending reservations. They just click on the number, go through review, and they hit okay or not okay for it to go forward. That point in time, it goes to the district where fees are reviewed and confirmed, and she hits the approve button. As soon as that happens, we take over. We're asking for insurance based on your district policy and payment based on your district policy.
And how long is that period of time?
You know, for Seminole, they've got it. Their average time for pending is 3 days, which is really, really fantastic. Generally, it runs about 2 weeks for some districts, but generally, we want to get you down to 1 week total. And again, it's really easy to log in, go to your dashboard, do that review. And if you have your internal schedules in the system, you're going to see that conflict. And you only have to enter your internals on our platform once, and you can actually push our calendar to your school calendar, no matter what you're using, iCal, Google, whatever. You can just kind of subscribe to the calendar. So it makes it, again, really, really easy for everyone to have access to that.
Is there a reason that we have to have this back and forth? Why couldn't it just be you have open dates? If you don't have an open date,
Yeah, so
And you
a
could-
renter, there's no back and forth. Once your internal schedules are in the system, on the renter portal, it's going to show in real time. If the school is using it and they've got their reservation in place in the system, it's not even going to show up available on the front end for the community users to even request.
that's sort of my point, is
Yeah.
that if the facility is available, then why would we have to go to the administrator? And the administrator says, okay, then it goes back, then it goes to you,
Well,
then there's a fee.
they'll want to make
Why-
sure
if
that
it's-
there's
if
a
it's open, why can't it
custodian
just be open?
available for the use of the facility. They may have like a really large event on campus where they can't accommodate another user group with their custodial staff or parking. So again, it's good for the schools to at least have that ability to look at that and make sure that there isn't something going on at their site that would prevent that renter from being able to use the facility.
But ultimately, it's a digital approval process. Right now, there is this kind of a linear approval process. So it stops at the school. Lauren doesn't even know about it until it gets to her and gets through all these stages, which usually takes, part of the reason it takes a long time. With our system, everyone's seated at the table at the same time. So if the people at the school don't make the approval, then if Lauren is the final approval for the district, Lauren can approve it without getting the approval from the school.
I might need to call call the school
She
and
might
say,
call, yeah.
why is this hung up? Hey, I think you
But
missed it.
these are like
Yeah.
small pieces of information that comes up. It's like you start looking at how long does each school in the district take to approve a request? And you'll have an average, we'll show you what the average is, and then you'll see the outliers. You've got one school that's taking 28 days to approve requests. That's not working with the community in a good way.
And we even have that listed here, days pending by organization, so you can see what the average is, who's below it and who's above it, so you can work directly with those schools to get them pre-approving faster.
I know we're kind of out of time. and
Sorry.
It's a busy schedule. If you guys have any other questions about it, or if you think of anything, let me know and I'll get the answers for you. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just got one quick question.
Sure.
Okay, you mentioned about, well,
question, I held it.
I had 3 more questions, and I didn't ask them.
but in reference to, there's something else going on campus, and they would have to say, okay, we can't do it because we got this. Could the campus not go and block out that area there that was be left on campus so that
Yeah, they
nobody
could.
could reserve it and not have to worry about it? Okay, that's all.
They absolutely can. There's even a way for them, if they're having their fields resided or gym repainted, to go in and do a maintenance block to remove that availability on the front end. Even if it's not being used internally, it's like a maintenance thing.
There's lots of flexibility in the system.
Tons.
How you determine what the availability is in general, then it starts getting taken up by internal and external uses, or even maintenance uses, like she's.
Okay. Mark, did you have a quick question?
Well, I don't know if it's quick.
Quick.
Let's find out. So my question is about the scaling of these fees, because now that we're adding in all these other charges for somebody who's, booking something, we already say our fees are kind of low. Is this going to be a sticker shock when we say, oh, that's not $30 anymore, that's $80 now? So what does that
I
process
think
look
that's
like?
why initially we don't have any intentions right off the bat of adjusting our fee schedule one way or the other. I mean, there may be the credit card transaction fee, but initially we need to get the data and we need to figure out exactly how much it is costing us.
But we do intend, I mean, there is an intent here to raise fees, so is that gonna be a
We
rollout?
are way overdue to evaluate our fees. Honestly, we are. It's time, and this will really help give us the data to analyze that and fairly.
And we actually recommend that you don't do it before. You go ahead and get on the system so that we can start getting some information to make decisions on.
Here's what I do know, we're gonna lose 12% now, that we weren't losing before.
It
By
averages
going
out
way
to
down.
about 10%.
Okay, we'll lose 10%. So we know we need to raise the fees 10%, right?
Well, we may make up for that in,
Volume?
Right.
well,
In manpower.
So instead of $10, it's $11.
administrative ease, because,
Well,
it's
there's somebody
manpower.
shuffling
We're gonna
paperwork.
lose some people over it?
No, we
She's
can
gonna,
devote more
she's gonna,
time to
ha-
other
that's what I was gonna say,
things.
she's gonna have a little bit more time.
I think we have to raise the fees personally, cover this.
Yeah, well, I think that's the ultimate goal, is to raise the fees. Otherwise, they're not gonna make enough
I
money
don't
to
see,
keep
I don't
working
see
with
going a
us.
whole year of collecting just to collect data
I don't think it's a
and
year.
lose 10% when we already think we're too low already.
Right, but I don't think we're gonna be raising fees by 2% or 10%. I think we're gonna be raising fees by several $100s.
No.
That's what
We control that
pulling.
part, what we raise.
You do control
We do,
that
but
part.
there- the
we
data
need
that's
We
coming,
need the
right,
data.
right.
They'll be able to analyze the data from School Dude also with our electricity bills, so that we can really figure out how much per hour it's costing to cool a gym.
But I don't think we're gonna do sticker shock the first 2 years. We're gonna, if we do anything that's gonna be drastic, it'll be gradually.
That would be
elevated
up
into
to
it.
you.
Go ahead and start now. You already know you've added 10% to your cost.
Exactly.
You probably will initially see a little bit more money coming in, because again, anytime you have a paper and pen process and different people making up their own mind about what your board policy is about regarding your rates, there's going to be some errors. We've even seen that in some of the districts that we've gone into where their filled rates were calculated incorrectly for a really low rate. They had to grandfather in some of those renters for a year before they could actually start charging them the board policy rates. And again, it was someone who was just doing the calculations incorrectly. So we may discover some of that for your district as well. But again, we'll give you that oversight. You can still make the determination on the fees.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
what I'm hearing is a suggestion that you bring back the fees so that we could look at
The
those.
suggestion is that I bring a contract to the board to partner.
No, what I'm hearing first of all is that you bring back the fees so that we could look at increasing those with this contract.
We gotta hire them first.
Well, I know, but we're talking about raising the
He's doing it on
fees
front end,
anyway.
That's what he was talking about.
You're talking about raising the fees anyway.
If we're gonna do it, do it.
Well, it seems simultaneous that you would do the contract and then also build in the service fee.
It
But you
would.
said there's a little option they can just click to, or that we can decide to pass that service fee onto them right from the beginning, right? So that, there you go, right?
Okay.
But I would like to take a closer look at all those fees.
I would like to look at our fees too.
Thank you.
I can get that to you. Would you like for me to send you what the fee schedule is along with we can do a comparison county to county, Central Florida?
That would be
Yes,
great.
that'd be
Yeah.
great.
I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is coming to us Monday, right?
Wait,
Their
this is coming to us
contract.
Monday?
Yeah.
No, you just had a meeting. You just had a meeting.
We just had one today. See, this is Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. 3.02, school improvement. She did make it back in, all right.
Hi, Katie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Katie.
No. No.
Where are you?
Good evening.
California.
I have Miss Liz West here with me. She has been very instrumental in some of our budgetary pieces with regard to the many funding sources that we have been operating from in the last couple months. So I wanted her to be also here for this great opportunity and to answer any questions. So I'm Katie Pearson. Greetings again to the board chair, superintendent, members of the board. I have, the teacher in me has pulled together thinking maps from the many, many documents that make up the DA rule and differentiated accountability school improvement. So I've tried to color code some things, and I'll walk you through all of those many maps that summarize multiple documents that I didn't want to bring here and bore you with. However, what we are presenting, we have not brought to you in a while, and there have been some changes. So we want to give you an overview of the differentiated accountability system and some of the requirements with regard to school improvement for our schools that fell into a D or F category. So with that said, our first is our circle map. And in looking at what is differentiated accountability and that system for school improvements, in defining what that is, the two bigger bullets there at the bottom are sentences. The state holds districts accountable for improving academic achievement of all students and turning around low-performing schools, as well as right next to that, state provides support and interventions for escalating intensity to low-performing schools in order to improve and sustain performance for all student subgroups. And then everything around that comes from the rule of those things that we have to put in place and that schools should have, being a multi-tiered system of support, a turnaround plan, the use of common planning, instructional review process, school improvement plan, ongoing monitoring, coaching, and support. So in a nutshell, when we're looking at what are those key requirements, that's what the state asks for us to do. There are two systems, though, that can place a school into what we call DA or differentiated accountability. We have been operating just off that green side there. We're comparing and contrasting here. And that was the state accountability system for several years. So in the state accountability system, we have the school grade, and that comes from FLDOE, and it deals with academic components as well as acceleration. We have added this year the federal side of that. So you may remember No Child Left Behind, that has transitioned into the federal ESSA, which is Every Student Success Act, right? Succeeds Act, you know, all of that. We just say ESSA, you know, we go by acronyms. And that comes from the US DOE. So there's also a federal component or accountability piece that plays a role. That piece, it ties to the school grade and takes every component that we already are evaluated on with regard to our school grade, but it also adds the emphasis on each individual subgroup performance. So not just all students in reading, math, science, and social studies, but all students and then every subgroup of students within that. So it goes back to the old AYP. If you remember that, it's just called something, it's just a different acronym, right? It also ties to ELLs, which are English language learners, and link their language acquisition. So where are they in their language acquisition process with acquiring the English language if English is a second language for them? Where are they in becoming bilingual? But both systems are accountability systems, as you see in the middle. Both are calculated annually, and both of those systems can place the school into what we call DA.
Now, just
Yes.
to be clear, I don't know, maybe you're getting to this, but we're in DA status with our two schools for state, not federal, right? Or are we also in it for federal?
Well, because it's tied together, it's both. We're in for both.
Because we have subgroups under the
Yes.
threshold.
So those schools, if 41% is where a school would earn, if they're below 41% in school grade points, that would trigger the grade of a D or a F. So the federal threshold is also 41, because you would already have a
So
D or a F.
we don't, it's the same two schools?
Yeah, it's the
federally,
same two schools.
And not any extras?
Yes, there are some that have a, what's called a federal flag, but they wouldn't necessarily be categorized as state intervention schools for DA. But maybe they have one subgroup that fell below the federal index or fell below 41%. And so they have special attention to that subgroup, and they're required to address that subgroup in their school improvement plan.
How many of those schools do we have?
We have several, because
Several is
statewide, ESE is a flag for about 70% of the schools statewide.
70? Oh, okay.
Yes. So it is, it's been a flag for many, being this was our first year, baseline year. So it could technically place a flag on a school for being, you're in what's called, which will be kind of like the next slide here, targeted support. But there's not anything that the state would require for you to do except to begin to plan and address that specific subgroup in your school improvement plan. So there won't be a state visit, there's not going to be a plan additional to the school improvement plan, there won't be anything tied to common planning, but you need to begin to address it. If it stays that way for 3 years, then there will be an intervention in place that could place you into a similar situation as what a DF school would get. Does that make
Yes,
sense?
thank you.
So because we're beginning, they're giving us a baseline to start from, and 3 years from now, it would probably be tied the same way. But I'm showing now because it's in effect, even though the implementation of the requirements are just a little bit different for federal versus
Thank you.
state.
Can you give us can you send us maybe a listing of those schools that meet the
Absolutely.
federal and which subgroup triggered it?
Yes.
Thanks.
And I'm curious if so many are for ESE? Like, is it something that we're systemically, it sounds like something that we're systemically doing in the state wrong? What is it? Not enough funds,
Well,
or?
I should have a lot of money if I can tell you what we're doing systemically in the state. I can't answer that part, but yes, I think that is a systems-wide issue that we need to look at with regard to that subgroup and maybe some of the accountability. So some students take the same assessment regardless of their disability, while others will take the alternate assessment. So there's only about 1% of students that take the alternate assessment,
and
but
the
there's
state, like,
many more
fights like
students that
cats and dogs
are
to keep 'em from
categorized as
taking that.
ESE. So that might be part of it, but at the same token, I have not dug into that subgroup enough to answer that one. Okay, we can do a whole board workshop on that. Okay, so our two categories, and I have these in yellow and blue to kind of help with, and this is the bridge map. So at the top of the yellow, it says targeted support and intervention, which we refer to TS&I, is a category for schools that have earned a grade of a single D, or a school grade of A, B, or C, but they have one or more subgroups below 41%. So we would have some schools right now that we would call targeted support, although there is no requirement other than school improvement plan right now in place. Okay? Leesburg Elementary is also in targeted support because they are this first grade single D. This is the first time they've gotten a D in several years. Then we have our blue category, which is comprehensive support and intervention, which we call CSNR, because we like, the acronyms. Is a category for schools that have earned school grade of a second D or a first F if their graduation rate is less than 67%, which would be a high school, or if their federal income index is below 41, or they have had a consecutive D or F. Okay? That puts them into the blue, which is comprehensive. So Beverly Shores is in comprehensive support.
So with Beverly Shores, the state came up with a ton of cash to throw at teachers.
Yes, and well,
Did
with
we get
both.
that at Leesburg also?
Yes, yes.
They did. So those two schools are getting extra encouragement for the best and brightest to go there.
For the very small
Not the
percentage of
best and
teachers
brightest.
that actually qualify for
This
that.
actually was brought up
It's
to
not like every
me.
teacher there.
Yeah, because our teachers don't have VAM scores, they can only get it if they have VAM scores. Our teachers do have VAM scores, but only third grade and up. So any primary kindergarten, second teachers, they don't have VAM scores by definition, so they
Fourth
can't
grade.
even be.
It's actually
It's
fourth
actually
grade.
fourth
Qualified.
grade. It's fourth grade and up, because
Fourth and up.
third grade doesn't have a VAM score. They don't have a score from the.
You don't have
Oh,
to
because
vote.
they don't have the previous year. Okay,
Unless
thank you.
they've taught in
Fourth and
a,
fourth and fifth grade teachers for reading or math.
Who have been that for 3 years are the only ones who could possibly be eligible.
That's ridiculous.
Don't, kindergarten.
well, I think you'll be happy, because Ms. Liz West has proposed some pieces, and we've created a plan that would help, and Mr. Clapp has assisted with that also in looking at some other opportunities. So, that's coming up, all right? So these, again, here are blue and yellow, so these are the ways that the schools can be categorized in terms of targeted or comprehensive support. Once in there, well, what are the effects? So then the state brings together kind of some requirements for us to look at. Differentiated intervention, support strategies are established. We have instructional reviews. We also have many documents that we have to produce and have requirements for. There's responsibilities for the school and the district to the department, and those are clearly delineated in the many documents. We have timelines for specific intervention and support strategies. We report the requirements, and we provide progress monitoring updates as prescribed. And then we set up there's a submission and approval criteria for turnaround implementation plans. And so I will go into, we have begun to draft a district managed turnaround plan for Beverly Shores. And so that is in the process, which we will be submitting very soon.
So this actually goes to what Mr. Yocum was speaking to about them presenting a plan of action, turnaround of what's happening. But it doesn't necessarily come back to us. It goes to your department and probably to the superintendent.
And to the state. There's a state regional executive director for the Bureau of School Improvement. There's also assistant director. Our assistant director is actually here with us today. We've been at both. Well, we were at one school today and the other school tomorrow. And so, Mr. Brian Jones, if you'll just wave your hand. Okay.
How you doing?
He has been with us, and so that we've already started this process. So yes, we will be submitting that report directly to the state, and then they will be with us.
Well, I think the other piece of that, though, that it's a really good idea is for us to get the updates periodically throughout the school year on this. Now, I recall, now it wasn't quite 8 years ago, because it was like, I was on the board, 15 or 16. There were 5 schools or so that came in and presented.
Absolutely.
Their presentations were not even in the same format, so we were getting one piece of data from one school, another piece of data from another school, and you couldn't compare what was going on. But then that was it. We never heard back from one of those schools until we saw school grades, and then
Yes.
that was it.
Yes.
So it'd be nice to kind of get some updates throughout the year as to how they're trending against their school improvement plan, and if they're on track to meet those
And we
goals.
can absolutely do that. The only reason we didn't schedule that together was because we have a timeline on some of this funding, and it's the first week of
Sure.
school, so we did not
I
want
get
to
that.
pull, them out at this time to present their individual plans. But I will give you the components that are required for our district managed turnaround plan and some of the pieces that we've already planned for with regard to that. Their individual school improvement plans, we did attach, they're in draft mode though. So they're still draft phase, but we didn't want to not have something for you that they have already begun. And once we get feedback from the state, they will be resubmitting, they will come to you again.
But if we don't turn around Beverly Shores, we lose him. We lose them as a
After so
school.
many
Well,
years.
If-
No, next year.
Like next year.
That's what I'm saying, after so many years.
That's a later slide.
So.
Is that,
It's right
coming.
here, so let me take you there.
Or it is a slide.
And, so that yellow school, right, that's where the yellow block, that would have been where Beverly Shores was last year and where Leesburg Elementary is this year. And there has been a change to the process where you used to have many more years to make this happen, and school improvement research says it does take a 3 to 5 year process. We don't have the same timeline anymore. So that first year when you enter as a single D, which was where Leesburg was, and now it is, and where Beverly Shores was, you just submit the school improvement plan. And we had Eustis Heights there as well last year. They have had a tremendous gain. And now when you hit that C or above, you exit out, you're done. Now into the blue section will be where Beverly Shores Elementary School is now. They have a school improvement plan that we submit. We have a district managed turnaround plan that we submit. There are 2 steps to that plan. One due September 1st, feedback, and then another update is due October 1st. That plan that we submit will last for 2 years, this year and the next year. That's why that next box is blue. Even though those schools will be out of that category, if a school wasn't, then they would be into that next block there. And at that time, we submit another plan. We keep operating off the district turnaround plan that was submitted, but we now begin to write what's called a turnaround option plan. At that time, we look at 3 options: an option for closure, an option for charter, and an option for an external operator. So you may remember, because you were on the board prior to, there used to be a 4th option, which was called hybrid, which means you could take any other model that was an effective turnaround option. You could put that into play and submit that, and it would be considered. That option is off the table now. So if you'll remember, we have Mr. Bill Miller, Bill Wade. He used that option a long time ago when Leesburg High School fell into turnaround criteria, and so that was a very effective option that is no longer available. So we must choose from those 3. So we write a plan around one of those 3. We seek community input as to what they would like. We also seek district, teachers, all of that. We take all of that input and we make a selection and we draft it into two plans, one due November and one due in January. And at that time, which as the plan is submitted and approved, then if it is charter or external operator, we move into the contractual services during that year and getting those contracts together, because the following year, if not improved, that would go into effect. And so those contracts would be null and void if it's a grade of a C or above, but would be in effect for that following year. So our timeline has been reduced considerably.
What defines an external operator?
So there are many companies that can submit to be external operators. So it could be anything from a private consultant to an actual like learning sciences that does the whole Marzano type package. They would submit to say we have this type of services, and then they kind of go on to a list that are approved external operators that we could choose from. We can also go with an outside, but we would have to show why we would deviate from that. So there's some set criteria in both of those plans that we would have to follow.
I've heard of in the state of Florida that there are some cities that run schools. Like, is that within that external operator option?
Well, I know like
for the
Jefferson
city of
County
Leesburg,
is
for
a
example.
charter. All of their schools are charters that, and I think it was due to their school grade that they had to choose. They only have 3 schools, I think, or 4. And so, yeah, that can happen. So they are no longer a public school system. They are a charter school system.
But is it run by their city?
No, it's run from
A
outside.
private
So
charter?
what goes after
As
that?
far as I know, like I don't work there. I'm just.
State should go over there.
No, I know. Okay, so let's just go there hypothetically. This conversation makes me crazy, like crazy insane. You guys should know. I'm like sitting here just saying, don't say anything. Just don't say anything. So I know. I tried. I even have to sneeze whenever it stopped. I'm like, okay, that's a good Lord saying, don't open your mouth. So let's say this implement select option, we say we're going to give it to a charter external operator. They get an F, and then they get another F, and then they get another F. Because I can tell you that if the people sitting at this table right here in front of me and the teachers at that school and the new principal that we have up there can't turn the school around, nobody can.
Well, this requirement is not this is not in place for charters. Charters are not held to differentiate account.
Right, so they just get to continue to run it, maybe even into the ground. We've had a charter close out there because they couldn't keep up with this requirement. So right. I didn't even think about the second one. I just infuriate. I mean, it's just crazy. I just have to say that. This is crazy. No offense. I know you're in the room, and I'm so sorry to say that to you. But there is such a talented group of people that are working with this school, and we are doing everything we possibly can to get these kids where they need to be successful in the school and atmosphere and at home atmosphere, and they're out of their ever-loving mind. It just makes me crazy. Okay, I'm done.
Amen. Honestly,
But
that is the good Lord speaking.
To go along with that, though, is there again the finances that are being given to bring in teachers to help that school.
Yes.
They're being so red flagged that it's almost like not able to be used. So I mean,
Well, we have We have had a few teachers that have qualified for the incentive, and in the TISA plan that we have presented to you that will go for board approval, that plan is allowing for additional incentive. So I will go over that to be able to share with you that we are trying to think about those that may not have qualified, and how can we write some criteria for them to qualify, and work with the union on that piece, as well as our HR department and Mr. Farnsworth.
So that I understand, from what the board helped me to understand, that we only had, the way that you recruit and you turn the school around is you get the very best and brightest. And the incentive was that we were going to give them additional funds that I
Yes.
thought was coming from the state. Again, you're here, sorry. But,
Some are.
and now I'm hearing that it is limited to 2 grades. So what in the world is going on? And my only other comment, since you brought the Holy Spirit to me, is that when we recognize that we have a school, and we knew about Beverly Shores, Leesburg kind of surprised us, but we knew about Beverly Shores. Why can't we get those incentives on the front end to help, rather than wait until they get into the status, and then we get on this timeline, and it's got everybody all nervous? I don't understand it at all.
Rhetorical? Or-
I just said it. I just said it in the back of the room just like she just did.
I get it.
But also though, because I don't know how many got emails to this point though, about existing teachers that are in those grades are not not eligible for this incentive?
So anyone that has been effective or highly effective on a 3-year aggregated VAM, which would mean taught in a tested grade in 3 years, is eligible. They don't have to teach again in a tested grade. So if I was eligible at another school because I taught 4th grade and I transferred to Beverly Shores, I can teach any grade, kindergarten, whatever, because I qualify and I can teach any grade, knowing that I'm not going to get a VAM again if I don't teach in a VAM grade, but I qualify to be there. So, but you can only qualify 4th through a tested grade to be eligible.
But what I'm saying is, existing teachers at that school will not qualify for this.
So if I'm teaching
fund.
4th grade at
If
Beverly
they did not
Shores,
have,
and I had a highly effective or effective VAM score, do I qualify? If I'm already there, I've been there.
yes, if you are in 4th or 5th, if you taught 4th or 5th grade or that grade previously, yes, you
So
would.
they'll get it.
Okay, because I don't know if everybody
If
else
they
did,
have
but I
a
received
van.
an email saying that I'm there and this is a slap in the face.
If they are in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd
Right,
grade,
it
or
is a
3rd
slap.
grade, no, they have not taught any VAM grade, which is the tested grade. That is
Right.
correct.
Okay.
They would not be eligible.
What do you
Okay.
mean it's a slap?
So do we
Well,
have,
because
do we
we're
have
not
4th,
eligible
5th,
for the
6th
extra
grade, I
funding.
guess, teachers going to
Okay.
1st, 2nd,
We're
3rd
not
grade?
doing that to them.
Yes, we
Okay.
have
Yeah,
some.
the state slapped
We've
them,
had
not
So
us.
they're
Got it.
qualifying for these dollars?
Oh, that's smart.
Yes. Yeah, we've had people qualify and transfer that will be getting the incentive money.
And how many are getting incentive money that are already there?
That I'm not sure. I think some are the people that are there and some are people that have.
Because they got to
transferred.
stay in their grade, right? Or could you move them?
No, if they qualify, they
They
can
already
teach any
qualify, they can
grade.
move around, too.
Yes.
Which is weird, because it's very, like, most primary teachers don't want to teach 5th grade, and most 5th grade teachers don't want to teach 1 through 2, you know? That's just
So
usually how they roll.
It's the
For 15th
first
grade,
year,
we do it that.
and it's the first year that they've offered any money for teacher recruitment. So I am pleased that something happened, right? If we could go back and say what would we want for next year, which we have talked to our state representatives about, we would like for VAM to come out earlier, because I think we would have many other teachers that had wanted to transfer, because VAM, the new VAM for this year just came out. School has already started. So during pre-planning, I'm not going to change my whole routine, nor do we want people pulling out of a school to come over. And some people didn't take the gamble because they weren't sure. I move everything and now my VAM doesn't come out right, and I've already started school and I've changed my routine and my kids are going somewhere else and I'm driving extra. So they didn't want to take that gamble.
But if they move
So-
to a B, let's say, that money goes away anyway. That's the other thing that's goofy.
No, it doesn't. If they are, if they have been in for 2 years, there's some additional incentive pieces that they're looking at for sustainability. So
That's
I don't know if the exact amount, And they'll have to play that year by year, but they are looking at not making it a total, because we know what may happen, right, with regard to that, so.
What about, I totally forgot what I was gonna say.
I'm gonna use Lauren DeRitter's, for the purpose of time, we have a long, no, I'm just kidding. What? I
go.
know,
I'll come
but
back.
there's
It'll come back.
There's some of that in here, so if
I
we
remember
get
it.
through some, go ahead.
The VAM score of effective, was it their overall score with the VAM included that had to be effective or highly effective, or just the VAM portion had to be highly effective or effective?
It's just the VAM
Okay,
portion.
okay.
And
So that's why they had to wait for the VAM score if they had. Okay,
yes,
got
that
it.
is why they had to wait, it's the state VAM.
Thank you.
So, okay, we're back to our blue school, Beverly Shores Elementary.
Can I
So-
ask one more question? Are we still transferring teachers over or asking? Okay, because I know that they actually filled,
Yes,
and they have teachers in all their classrooms. So
Yes.
we're not, our plan isn't to take any kids and then add it, like switch out a less effective or less effective teacher for a highly effective teacher. We're not doing that, are we?
we are not making plans to do that.
Okay.
We must submit our rosters to the state. Based on our rosters, our state can make recommendations, okay? Our stance is that we do not want a school to not be fully staffed again, or to have transition, because that was part of last year's situation. So we are writing and standing. Our narrative as well as our justification will be that we do not want to disrupt the school
Right.
campus. So
Because we want every kid with a good teacher, but also part of having a good teacher is having stability.
we agree.
Okay.
And those that may need support will have additional support, but we don't want to disrupt either.
Okay.
Everything right there, every single plan and all of that is the pieces and requirements with regard to our Beverly Shores, so the school improvement plan. They also have a UNISIG, which is a school improvement grant budget that is connected to their school improvement plan. There's a checklist of requirements that we have to go by. That supplemental teacher allocation, that's the money you were talking about coming straight from the state. There's a community assessment team that is organized to provide additional feedback. We have quarterly data collection template that we fill out with regard to performance and progress, early warning signs, and academic data. Opportunity scholarship transfer was in place to allow for a transfer option beginning of the year, and then lowest 300 as additional instructional time was added to their day. For Leesburg Elementary School Improvement Plan, they also had the benefit of UNISIG budget as well as the checklist of requirements that we adhere to, and they also were eligible for that supplemental teacher allocation funding. From the district, we have to produce a signed and board-approved MOU. So that was one of the attachments that was provided to you to see the MOU that was drawn to go along with our TISA plan and in support of these requirements. We also have a district checklist of assurances that we adhere to. And that VAM school roster, all of our teachers' VAM is uploaded and sent to the state for those two schools for review and verification. Then the TISA application is the separate pot of money, which I'll show you next, as well as our district managed turnaround plan 1 and 2. So these are all the pieces that we're currently, we would love that there'd be one plan that we write, but there's multiple pieces.
Are they entitlement grants, or we don't know for sure that we're gonna get them? Are they entitlement?
No, we will get. Yeah. So here are those three pots of money so that you can see, and I think this is a great thing that the state has provided. We usually have unfunded mandates, but they have tied some money to school improvement, which has been very helpful. The first pot is our UNISIG. School Eustis Heights as well as Beverly Shores received that first pot of money last year, where they tied it to their school improvement plan and allowed for some additional staff at the school and some additional resources. The second pot is the TISA, that's new. And so this is additional funding that is available. It's based on some criteria, and then we have some flexibility to write an additional plan. We've tied most of that plan to offering additional incentive funding to some that may not have received or have been eligible because they weren't in a tested grade. So that is the majority of that plan, which was attached as well. Then our last was that supplemental teacher allocation. That's the money that was coming directly from the state, the $15,000 for highly effective 3-year aggregated VAM, and then the 7,500 for effective. So those were the three, and they're very different. So we wanted to make sure that we provided you the different requirements. TISA money is the one that requires our MOU, hence you have the MOU that is attached to the plan that we will be sending forward.
Did we have a summer program this year at Beverly Shores?
Yes, yes, for the whole summer, to assist with getting students prepared and filling in some of those holes. So our district managed turnaround plan, we have to make several assurances to our states. One is that there's district capacity and there's support, and then the school leadership capacity is in place. So with regard to district capacity, we have to have a dedicated district position to help lead or facilitate and be attached to that, which would be myself. I've also introduced to you that we have another member of our team that's come back in instructional role with regard to our team, but we definitely don't, we have a person that has done that, which is Mr. Bill Miller, who has joined that. So he will also be supporting both of those schools on that team to ensure that we are meeting those requirements. And then we will align the instructional programs to make sure that they are aligned to the Florida standards and that there's ongoing progress monitoring. The other is that ensure that leaders have a proven track record. And so there were principal changes at both of those schools this year. Ensure that they have priority with regard to hiring effective teachers, and we've had Kiana Peterson attached to that in terms of recruitment and retention, and helping to feed who is highly effective, and get them attached to go over and talk to those principals and know that there's an option there for them. And then ensure that teachers' state VAM percentages are in balance with the district and the state, so that there's not a higher percentage of teachers that are ineffective at that particular school above the district or the state average. Then in submitting those, they go to the state board. They look for the strength of the plan that we've written, whether or not it's sufficiently tailored to address the needs. If there's any prior record with regard to the school leadership or the district in terms of turning around other low-performing schools. Do we have a history of success? To what extent? The recommendations that come from our state regional executive director in the bureau. And then they review and they can approve or not approve based on what we are submitting. So that's pretty much the process. Okay. Our district managed turnaround addresses all of these 6 areas. And so with regard to that, we have, like I said, put in place with regard to some changes in leadership. We have a district team in place that supports that, along with the regional team and along with curriculum, working together to make sure that there is support provided at those schools. We also have targeted academic focus that is in line with our district focus, reading, thinking, talking, writing, authentic literacy. We know that numeracy is also a need in both schools, so we continue to support that and looking at the high expectations and strong instruction. There's targeted interventions daily, so Leesburg Elementary has a intervention time, just like all of our schools. Beverly Shores has an additional 30 minutes onto their existing 30 minutes, so they have a full hour of additional intervention. Then positive culture and climate. We know that our students need to feel safe and included. And then additional monitoring from our cabinet level and senior staff for ongoing progress monitoring. So all of those pieces are part of our district managed turnaround plan.
Are they using a program for their intervention time, or are the teachers just?
There's multiple programs in place, so we're really looking at problem solving and students' needs. Some will have the LLI intervention, some may have SIPs, some may have others. So there will be multiple depending upon.
So what are we doing different other than being fully staffed? What are we doing different this year than last year?
Well, that's the big one. Fully staffed is huge, and I think in last year, even in not being fully staffed, you're constantly restarting, and so you would get some people in place, and then maybe another vacancy. So that chasing of staff became very problematic. So fully staffed is huge. We know that the teacher is the single greatest difference maker for all of our schools. So that is huge. We also have a stronger team with regard to many more positions were provided through some of this additional funding. And we also have more alignment with regard to that. The leader that is at Beverly Shores has been in our district. She's not learning new processes and new things. She knows Lake County. She knows that piece. She knows that community. So you don't have to restart that piece. So I think we've gotten off to a magnificent start. We were there today. There's things that we still want to make sure that we are structuring and targeting, but that's huge. Who is in front of the a sub is very different than a
Right.
certified teachers in front of kids from day one.
So, I mean, the game with this is that this is all about, this is 100% about how they test. So how are we monitoring? Are we monitoring them with a method that's good enough to match the test?
Yes, I think so. Our district pieces that we have in place that are aligned, many assessments, and we're looking at creating some that are more focused on smaller checks so that we can do it more frequently, but in smaller doses, they are supportive. iReady is there, but that's more of an ongoing diagnostic piece as opposed to a progress monitoring that I would like for a school in this type of situation where we got 1 year, right? So we are looking at being more prescriptive, and I do think our district tools give us a better yield. If you look at our trajectory, most of our assessments that were created here through the help of our psychometrician to Norm give us a reliable indicator at mid-year time where we are. So I think our staff, we have staff that know the standards. That's what they do, and they know how to look at how are we formatively assessing the standards. So I have faith in putting those pieces together to be a little bit more frequent in targeting and diagnosing needs.
I've got some follow-up questions, if I may.
Absolutely.
One, okay, so and I don't know how deep we want to get into the weeds here, but, okay, so Leesburg Elementary, we were kind of surprised, taken aback by the math, right? We had these tools in place last year, right? The iReady, the lake assessments. Did any of that indicate that there was going to be a significant decline in math?
No, theirs did not.
So if they didn't send the flag up for us last year, I guess I'm looking for, what's the piece this year that
Well,
says,
last
well,
year
this
they
year
did.
it'll work?
Yeah, they did not have the standards-based minis. They only used the iReady. Right?
They
So
didn't use them, or
They did not. They didn't have
Standard,
them.
They didn't have-
standards-based
No.
minis.
Standards-based minis are what we'll be using this year.
And that's what
We have
Angel's
been,
making?
yes.
Okay.
We've had them in the system. It's just we don't want to provide additional assessment, right? We've been very cautious of they're doing already the iReady and not pulling for more assessment time. So they've been in the system, but they've only been pulled, at frequency based on need, and they're optional. Now that schools are in certain categories, it's not optional. These are some of the requirements with regard to BA, so we will be pulling some of those minis to use. iReady has historically given us pretty good data. This
Overall
past
as a
year-
district, but school by
Right.
school,
This
it doesn't
past
always align.
year, It did not, and that's not just for us, that is statewide.
So going back to the assessments that they didn't give last year, these, now I thought, and I'm fuzzy on the details, but I thought some of the quarters were optional, but there's also
That's in our secondary schools.
not at elementary,
No,
except for science.
except for, they gave science.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
But not math. Maybe we should.
That iReady is what we use for math and
Okay.
ELA in elementary schools.
And it's not,
But they are going to do
it's
that.
not correlating, is the problem. Or is
This
what we
past
think the
year,
problem
it
is.
has been, it was not as, it did not give us what we expected. In prior years, it has been more reliable. Okay?
Do we have any idea why? Have we talked with the iReady people?
That's not my area there, but we will. I'm sure that curriculum is like, they have been in, conversation. And so we've already gotten ahead of that with regard to looking at some of those mini pieces and making sure that we have some tools in this area.
So I'll just add to that Dr. Weiskopf and I have been part of a Central Florida Coalition of Superintendents and Curriculum folks who met with iReady folks, sharing our concerns about the reliability and the predictability and the alignment of that. And we, as a coalition, have made our concerns known, and that is a huge financial impact on iReady if the districts do not see that we can rely on their data. Then you have 6 districts who have said we will look for other options, and we imagine others will follow suit. So they are under some tight requirements right now to bring back to us, why did we see the disparity this year, and what we expect to see in the future, or we will be looking for some alternative. And so, and I know Dr. Weisskopf and I are already kind of considering following suit with some of the other districts to begin looking now, and let's not wait, because we need a more accurate determinant. And I do think that our own local assessments will give us a much more reliable data. So we are going to be working on that.
Okay. My other follow-up question, kind of to some of your thoughts, and granted, I'm going to preface all this with, I think we're set up a whole lot better this year, given the staffing level, right, and I understand those challenges. And we've added more resources, right, more people to go in and support. But I also look back to last year, and we had a lot of people on Beverly Shores campus to begin with, between your department, CIA, all these regional folks in there. Were there any key learnings that were taken away from any of these groups from that experience last year that helps influence how they provide the support this year?
I think having systems in place and everyone at the table at the same time is key. I do think some of last year, based on scheduling needs during mid-year time when data was not trending upward, everyone kind of pulled back from other commitments to clear their calendar and get there, right, and jump in. So we need more data before mid-year. Hence, the quarterly evaluations, or even small things between a unit, so that we can be more organized with regard to needs and support. The team at Beverly Shores last year was not as large in terms of intervention support. So there is more intervention support there this year in terms of those that might be out of the classroom that support individual students' needs and pull small group. I think that does make a huge difference. Last year you have people pulling small group, providing direct instruction, filling in for a sub. So there were pieces on a day-to-day basis that you needed to do on the day-to-day basis, as opposed to let's strategically plan over time based on need. So the lesson learned there, I think, for all involved, is the indicator that we have came a bit too late.
I agree with that. I think that's on target.
And from that lesson, because hindsight's always 20/20, but we knew that we had, from day one, we had a problem because we didn't have enough teachers.
Yes.
And then trying to recruit teachers, then we had the district in there, you guys, that what would you have done differently?
I had teachers there day one.
We didn't.
No, and that's a state problem. So this year, with regard to the money, I think that did help with some enticement. So the collective effort to ensure that we started planning, pre-planning, and day one with a staff in place, I think will make a huge difference. So if you're asking me what I would do, teachers need to be there. And that's all of our schools, not just those, right? So without that, it becomes hard. And the more subs that you have on a campus, the harder it does become.
So what do we do if we get in a situation like that? We know from the very beginning that what do we do?
With the teacher shortage, I don't know. And I think this is going to be a ever-growing problem. So I can't tell you what do we do, because the number of students and class size requires that this class size gets this teacher.
No, but rather than maybe put a substitute in this one room, and this room next door has the qualified teacher, you put them both together and let the qualified teacher deliver the instruction and the substitute,
Oh,
right?
that absolutely happened. We had district people next to the sub. We had subs taking some of the grouping things while.
But the district people, though,
came
weren't
in
there
and
to teach every day, every lesson, right? So,
At some days, towards the end, yes, they were.
well, okay.
So what you're saying is, when you say you needed to be there sooner, you think the district needed to move in sooner? Like your department needed to literally move in sooner? So can we, like, is there a way for the teachers that were there to like raise the red flag and, like SOS, we need help earlier? Like, does it have to be data-based? Do you know what I'm saying? Sometimes, like, you
have a
can
sense.
tell.
They'd
Yeah,
have a
you have a
sense.
sense. You can tell, like, that room is crazy. those kids are running around all day. My kids are sitting down. That teacher needs help. Teachers know this stuff.
And do it without any repercussions, because they may actually go over the principal's head, because the principal doesn't want to alert what's happening because of their job. So therefore, they could do it without any repercussions.
Our principal that is there now has a good pulse. She's had
Well, I know
every day.
who's there. I don't have,
Right.
I'm talking about in previous.
Yes.
That's what we were talking about in previous. If this,
The administrator that was there was competent. She was new. So there was some newness to the.
I think this goes back further.
no,
I think
I'm not
it
saying
is.
it's all on
more
her, but
endemic of a situation that was, it was a perfect storm coming, is what it.
Okay, so I mean, here's a case in point, though. The early warning sign indicators for the prior year said 42 kids had qualified with 2 or more. Last year was 372. That was a huge ballooning that says something went terribly wrong. Yes, okay, there was already, some challenges at that school, but last year went terribly bad. Right, to go from 42 kids to 372 kids exhibiting more than one early warning sign indicator?
Is that on Performance Matters?
No, that's in their school improvement plan.
Absences
There it is.
increased, discipline did increase, subs and.
So-
And reinforcing expectations is different with a sub than a teacher.
So
We
my,
have changed leadership.
right. So my question though is kind of digging deeper into this one. The early warning sign indicators really, by the time you've triggered this, it's already too late, right? You've already failed something. You've already got excessive attention. You've already been suspended, right? So obviously we need to be able to track that kind of stuff before you trigger the early warning sign indicator. And we've got Performance Matters as one tool, right? And based on our experience of having tried Performance Matters, right? We had our own kids triggering warning signs for the flu, So I mean, how are we using that data to catch these kids before the early warning sign data
Yeah.
triggers and it's already too late?
Yeah, and part of our meeting today was around that. What are students exhibiting more than one indicator? Where are students that are retained? And starting to put together those targeted lists and what is the intervention they will get, not just academic, because if it's absenteeism, I might need a different type of intervention with regard to someone's going to be connected to me, check in every morning to make sure I'm here, and we have a call out maybe that goes specifically, or we call that parent. So we are looking at how do we set up that system for that to happen. I think that was a little bit harder last year because that is not having all the classroom teachers in place to help with that system. It didn't go as planned. Having everyone in place and a leader that understands that, has done that, and can continue to support it with a team that's directed, as well as the team and having our state support as well as our turnaround principal, I think we will be able to manage it really well.
Well, that, and I guess the significant decrease we hope to see in out-of-school suspensions with this new PATH teacher, right? I mean, that would,
That
when
helps us.
you've got so many
Yeah, and
little
a
kids
mental
getting
health
out of school
liaison.
suspended at an elementary school, I just, there had to have been a better way, is what I look back at. There's, okay.
okay, I just have one thing on a previous slide, and it talked about the learning walks that would be conducted daily.
Wow.
That doesn't mean that there would be every classroom's getting a learner walk today, but we do expect that leadership is walking daily, right? And so in walking daily, learning walk meaning there are certain things that we're looking for on a daily basis and we're being consistent. So there is expectation that there is leadership within the school walking classrooms and making sure instruction is at the forefront on a daily basis. That doesn't mean we're going through everybody doing the tool and calculating, right?
Right.
So it's not that same in terms of intensity, but the expectation that daily we look for instruction. There was one other piece that in the MOU, so you did ask me about the other teachers. So in that MOU, part of the TISA shows that if you're highly effective, there would be 8,500 provided, effective 6,400. And here's what we are proposing, which would need to be state approved. It's in the MOU actually. This would have to be state approved, is that we would use the district VAM, so to speak, which is we really don't have a VAM, but there is a growth model or a growth level that's attached that teachers receive regardless of what grade they teach in their evaluation system. So if the state allows us to use what we already use for our district rating in that particular area, we would like to see that they allow us, that anyone is rated effective or effective, to utilize our additional funding to provide those teachers. with incentive money. This is only for Beverly Shores, because that pot of money is only coming from Beverly Shores. But we understand that some people may be there and still didn't teach in a tested grade, but were effective or highly effective based on our district indicator, so we would like to be able to do that. So that's why we had to come before you at this time, because that's the plan we will be submitting to the state based on this MOU, as well as some other incentives for teachers, such as EOC and other things. And that's how we plan to use that funding. So we hope that you would consider and approve that.
So that would be coming to us on our 26th meeting.
Yes.
Why
Okay.
are we breaking it up in the half year?
I'm sorry?
I mean, I'm just wondering why
Yeah, okay.
are you choosing to break it up by semester?
Well, they leave, how do you get that money back?
Yeah. It's 2 installments to
That's-
get,
Well,
you get a
my
big
only
check.
thought was just give it to him at the end of the year.
Oh, we thought people might want it around December.
That's right.
Christmas.
Here's money I earned 9 months ago.
Yeah, that's the state's.
Who is the community assessment team? Who is that?
The community assessment team can be anyone, so it's just kind of a call. There's a SAC team, which is convened at every school monthly. Community assessment is just an extra call to anyone else in the community that wants to give additional feedback outside of the SAC team. So
You're going to meet 3 times a year.
4 times.
It says 3 here.
Well, 3 more. We have one already, and then there'll be 3 more. We've had one.
Can we,
Can you like add
Could we-
us, me or Bill to the list so that,
it's your school.
you know, because I didn't
No, no.
even know we already had one.
Actually, what
make
I'd like
sure
to
that
see,
you
is
are
I'd like to
aware.
see that presentation to,
Yes.
to pigtail off what you guys are saying. Let's hear what the community says, and then the administrative response to these recommendations. So that establishes your timeline
Yes.
to go back to us.
Right. And I always try, at those meetings, if I'm in a SAC meeting, I try to keep my mouth shut because I talk plenty.
Yeah, and so one is tonight, which is pretty much this presentation of informing the community of requirements. The principal will be sharing some of the elements of the school improvement plan that's in front of you, and then we will offer any additional input from the community on additional things they would like to see. So that, there'll be 3 more that occur, and at that time, we will keep the community updated. Sherry Owens pushed that out through social media probably a couple weeks ago, so that there would be anyone that wanted to attend would know within that community. This is available if you want to.
Is Mr. Miller going to be at the school? Are you going to be there?
He'll be
2
there
days a week,
tonight.
I think it said.
I'd
You
love to
mean
hear
tonight?
from you periodically. Just good to see you back.
Yeah, we
wondering
won't
why
let you
you're coming.
retire.
So can you help me understand the 7.75 hours? 'Cause currently teachers are paid 7.5. We've got to add an extra hour of instruction. How does the extra hour only add 15 minutes to their day?
So we already have 30 minutes extra in our schedule because we already have 30-minute intervention blocks.
Okay.
So we meet the 30 minutes already for our school system because some school districts don't have that 30
Okay,
minutes embedded.
all right.
So we added 30 more. We added Beverly Shores, instead of starting at 8:30, starts at 8:15. And instead of ending at, I think, 3:15, and at 3:30. So we added 30 minutes to their daily schedule.
And what are the
So
teachers' hours? When do they-
gosh,
when do they
I can't
arrive and leave?
remember. I think it's like 8. So they have 15 minutes in the morning, and then they go to 3:45. So school ends at 3:15. They might have 15 minutes of duty, then they're done at 3:30. They have 15 minutes on, so that they have that 15 minutes of kind of time before and 15 minutes of time after. So we're able to do it by adding 15 minutes because we still have other people on duty, so to speak, or are doing, but yes.
And so you're able to dismiss the whole school in 15 minutes? My question. Teachers are no longer supervising children after their contract hours, or?
Well, we have some TAs, and they
Okay.
have a big leadership team now because of some of this funding.
And why I circle back to this is because when I first entered this board, that was one of my greatest frustrations, that the board prior thought, or I don't even think it was board approved, that bell schedule. The administration at the time, in their infinite wisdom, thought you could dismiss schools in 15 minutes, and then teachers were all over the place, still supervising children after their contract hours. So I said, we got to look at this, right? 15 minutes is not enough time to move 1,000 kids out of a school, or in this case, I know this one's smaller, but I guess that's, I want to make sure that that's not happening. And then the other piece was the lack of prep time there. Like if you
Yeah.
are supervising children from 3:30 to 3:45, children are out the door. Okay, now I can set up for tomorrow, but I'm already after contract. So
Yeah. Well, in their UNICEF also, there is additional money for hours, our planning after school. And so Eustis Heights used a lot of that last year with regard to, we know that teachers stay. So they have that funding that is available to offer. Most of what we have pulled together is for teachers. This money and using all of this could be used for additional resources or supply. It's not. It's going to teachers. And this UNICEF money, we could have pulled to do the same. It's not. It's for planning time. And we know they're staying later. We know that there's going to be other pieces, and we want to make sure that they understand that we know it's challenging and there's funding.
I think the piece I'm referring to isn't necessarily the planning time. It's just that, okay, now if I've still got a room full of bus riders and car riders and they're kindergartners, right? I can't turn my back to them now and get my classroom ready for tomorrow, right? I can't grab the books I need, or whatever papers I might need, or whatever supplies, so on and so forth, because I'm still supervising children, right? So I guess that's my question here is, when are they done supervising children?
But that's hypothetical.
3:30, and
They're done at 3:30 supervising children. They're all gone by then.
Our time, this is the same as in place in every other school. So as the district lead, I don't know how every school operates.
At every other school, they have twice as much time.
15 minutes, and we gave them another 15 minutes to make up for that, so that they have 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after, the same as
No, all the other schools, they dismiss at 3, teacher contract till 3:30. They've got 30 minutes at the end of the day to move kids out and to ready the rooms. This is only 15, so this is different. This is the only school on a 15-minute difference, right? So that's my question, are these people, are they gonna be supervising children all the way up until 3:45? Because I don't know how long it takes to dismiss this school.
3:30.
Right, dismissal starts at 3:30, but I still have kids in my room.
Dismissal starts at 3:15.
Dismissal starts at 3:15.
And may I say something? The coach, what we've had to do, because we're going back and forth with DOE and writing the UNICIG and the TISA and everything. And I want to thank Katie for including us at the table to begin with. And the principal both principals at Leesburg and Beverly Shores have had their APs there. And Katie had 2 of her team. Katie and myself, I had 2 of my team. So it was really nice to sit down and say, okay, we have this pot, this pot, this pot. What do you want to do with it? So all the players are at the table, and everybody is on the same page with all these different pots of money. One of the things that the DOE has asked for are the coaches' schedules. And so I can tell you from Beverly Shores, we had to get the actual content area coaches' schedules, what they would be doing all day, and they have duty from 3:15 to 3:30. So I believe the intent, while Cindy's not here, is that will have enough coaches, and she's got a lot of TAs through Title I. I believe that they are going to take the children so that those teachers are then free.
That's what I was going to say too. I'm
Yeah.
at Umatilla Elementary, the kids leave the classroom
Yeah,
at
that's
3
fine.
o'clock, and they come outside and they're
3:15,
supervised.
they're done at 3:45.
Right.
I have not stood there and watched dismissal. I have watched instruction, but I have not stood and watched dismissal.
What's the enrollment? It's under 200 or something.
It's pretty low. Well, it's not under 200.
They're 200.
They're, I think, even
So, okay, no.
So, in terms of, and once again, I'm not quite sure how far we were getting to the weeds today, but obviously you said the school improvement plans were still in draft form. So I've got some, probably more specific questions about those, and I guess, do we touch base with you later to talk about those in greater particular?
They have to be in draft, right, because of SAC?
But yeah, we still have to get feedback from community tonight as well as SAC. The state will also give us some feedback as well. We have an instructional review that takes place, and then they do their final drafting. So there are some more pieces. We attached them because we didn't want to have nothing there for you to see in terms of they've started their planning, but it is not the final version. It is the draft. So if you have recommendations, you can let me know.
Well, one's a question, it might be of interest to the group. Beverly Shores has indicated an adaptive reading program. To me, that sounds an awful like the tagline that iStation used. So, an adaptive reading program, Lexia. I don't know anything about that. So, is that a different form of iStation for reading, or what is that?
It is a targeted type of skill-based, program.
Computer?
Yes. It's a computer.
adaptive.
Adaptive, like iStation,
Those suck.
right? I mean, isn't the teacher the greatest source of?
Yes, I do. believe
Okay.
the teacher is the single greatest difference
So,
maker.
has this been vetted? I guess I asked
As
this.
said, we have, and we have talked to the school as a team. We want to honor their thinking, but we do need more with regard to how it will be used. What are the ways that you see that impacting, and how will it be monitored? So we are, like I said, we have more feedback coming and an instructional.
Because I'll go absolutely crazy. I'll tell you now, if I just find out that these kids are spending, 30 or 45 or 60 minutes a day just over on computers as opposed to actually
We
getting.
do not want that.
Okay.
So what is the vision with this, Lexia? I'm looking
Well,
at
they
this
still need to,
website.
I guess they're still talking about it.
Yes, they were looking as an additional support. I think it was kind of the iReady, we're not sure, maybe we need to look at something else, but in terms of that, we've honored the thinking, and we will continue to look at some options with regard to that.
I guess, I mean,
I think there's Renee was, do you want to share? Do you want to come up here? She was trying to get attention, so.
Thanks, Renee.
They're going to use Lexia in their Lit Lab, which is part of their wheel, 1 day a week, K-5.
That is what they proposed.
okay. And you all have vetted this. You're
We're
still
not
vetting it.
done, the plan is
Okay.
not done.
Okay. I just want to make sure somebody didn't pick a computer program because it sounds good. As I'll tell you, you should go into IXL for science. It absolutely stinks. It's the worst thing ever created. But schools were using that, right?
Yes,
So
they were.
I guess I just want to make sure that if it's
Our
good, if
goal
we're going to
is
say
never-
instead of going with a teacher, you're going to spend time moving the mouse around. It's
No, our
Being
goal,
in the
our goal
library
is never
with books.
to replace teacher
well,
with a computer.
I know what the goal is, but I know what also
Mr.
happens
Dodd,
sometimes.
Well, and
let
I
us
think you've gotta
finish,
give-
And I guarantee you that we will not bring forward a plan that is all
Okay.
computer-based with regard to.
And
the work that we-
can I just reiterate, too, that Mrs. Crucidas was chosen for the reason of her leadership. And I think that she's made some very big changes. She knows her curriculum. I've worked with her actually as a teacher. I know she knows database instruction. She knows instructional strategy. She has a strong team. I don't really think any of them, I honestly think they'd be offended if they heard us sitting here questioning whether they're going to use a reading device as a way to teach children that are failing. So I'm just saying, like, I trust the leadership decision that they're making. I hear the concerns because we've had them in the past before, but at the same time, we've got to let them have some, like, how are we going to meet the needs of 342 early warning sign students with the most instructional impact in the time of day that we
And
have
I
them?
don't think there's any reason to be offended. I'm just asking how it's used, right? And because we're still held accountable to the public, and the public wants to know, or has asked in the past, why is my kid going to school spending 30 minutes on iReady and 30 more minutes on iStation? What's the teacher doing during all that time, right? So to ask how they're going to use it is fine. I'm not saying they should not use any computer program at all. Just what's the
Absolutely.
usage?
And so in
That's all.
bringing this forward to you, we take back that recommendation and that concern, and bringing it forward tonight to the community, we take back their recommendations and concern as well. So all of that will be included as we continue to update that plan. So it will come back to you, I promise. Okay, that was the last slide, and we kind of talked through the program in terms of our staff coming in and working with the region and with the curriculum for data analysis, school improvement planning, progress monitoring, and ongoing sustainability. So our plan do check act plan. We're good, yes? Okay, so we will be bringing principals back towards you after we have those plans complete as well.
So that'll be in September?
But the MOU will come
So
before us.
maybe September-ish, beginning of September, middle of September, somewhere, yes.
The MOU will be coming before us very soon, right?
That is already on the board agenda, as
August
well as the
26th.
TISA plan that would provide the extra incentive money, dollars, and this MOU that would be in conjunction with that.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
Excuse me. All right. Next on the agenda is the impact fee study. Hold on.
Thank you, board members, superintendent. I have with me today, Steve Tyndall and Megan Camp from Tyndall Oliver. They are the consultants that the district contracted with to do the impact fee update, and they are here to tell you all about it. I'm going to turn it over to Megan.
Good afternoon. I'm Megan Camp with Tyndall Oliver. We have a presentation going over a little bit of the background and overview of the impact fees and then the technical findings. So as far as the background, the district's impact fees were last updated in 2015, and by state legislation they need to be updated regularly, and also by the impact fee ordinance. So that's that interim update to make sure that the impact fee is reflecting most recent and localized data. As far as impact fees themselves, they are a one-time capital charge to new development, and the main purpose is to make sure that the new capacity cost generated by the new growth is funded for it. They help to implement the capital improvement plans. So the purpose is really maintaining the level of service as the growth increases. And it does, the impact fees do calculate the cost of growth, so they are also useful in the case of large development as far as having some consistency. And they are most needed when there's high growth and relatively limited funding. So the basic impact fee formula looks at the asset value per student. So those are the school buildings, buses, and so on, the capital assets, what the value of it is today. From that, we subtract any non-impact fee funding from future development for the same infrastructure, so that they are not charged twice for the same buildings and so on. And that net cost gets multiplied by demand, which is measured in terms of the student generation rate by housing type. So in terms of the findings, we'll start with giving you a quick overview of each variable and then get more into detail. So this is for single-family land use. So the cost per student since the last study decreased compared to the last study. The credit, which ends up decreasing the fee, credit also decreased, that increases the fee. So that differential, the net cost credit effect, was about a 10% decrease. And then any other changes after that is because of the changes to the student generation rate. So in the case of single family, student generation rate increased. So then overall decrease in the impact fee ended up being 4% instead of a 10%. There are several variables of the fee that we'll go through, starting with the inventory. And that's including the traditional schools only. We are not including any charter schools that are run separately. And there are 43 of them in the inventory. And then we measured the service delivery for capital purposes in terms of the square footage per student station. And that's based on discussions with your staff and the prototype facilities, the type of facilities that we build going forward. As far as the facility cost per student station, that is to include all costs related to building schools, so construction, architectural costs, furniture, fixture, land, and so on. And when we did that, we looked at any schools that were built recently, as well as future estimates, and then that also got compared to the data from other jurisdictions to increase the sample size. So this has a lot of numbers, but really, overall, when we added everything, the cost per student station for the district, the local cost, is about almost $28,000 or so. Now, as of 2016, Department of Education required that the cost be limited to what they publish, and it cannot exceed without some sort of financial penalty to the district. So when we look at the DOE, it's slightly lower than your local costs. So we use that cost, and I think when we talk to your staff as well, there's an effort to try to increase the efficiency and build a type of prototype that will cost somewhat less. So it ended up being, instead of 28,000, more like 27,000. And then when we convert the facility costs from per student station to per student, we look at the ratio of the enrollment to capacity. So when you have available capacity, that means the community is building at a level that there's more than one station per student. And when there's a shortage, it's the other way around. There are fewer than one station, less than one station. So that kind of shows the investment the community made to this day. So at this point, you have about 4% shortage at elementary, 12% available capacity in middle, and then 2% shortage in high schools. So when we also look at any of the stations that still have debt on them, and if the debt is being paid with impact fees, that meaning it will be paid 100% by new growth, we subtract those from the capacity or available student stations, the supply of the stations. So when we make these adjustments, the cost per student station of about $27,000 ends up being about $26,000 because you have more of a deficiency than surplus. In addition to station and building costs, we add the cost for transportation and then ancillary facilities like the maintenance buildings, garages, and so on. And those are relatively minor, so the transportation cost, this is the basically the buses and white fleet, it's about $1,000 per student, and the ancillary cost is about that as well. And then, then we get into the credit components. For that, we look at how the district is funding new capacity, basically looking at how it was funded past 5 years, how it's programmed next 5 years. So there is some non-impact fee funding being used, and then as well as outstanding debt to the extent that it was used for capacity project, there's a credit given for that as well. So the sort of a cash ongoing credit, it ended up being about $185 per student. There was some sales tax allocated for Fruitland Elementary. And then in terms of debt service, this is the portion that's being paid with millage and or sales tax. It's not impact fee payment, so that's about $2,000 per student. So we take all the costs added together, so that's about $28,000 per student, and then the total credit is about $2,200. So subtracting that gives us a net cost of about almost $26,000 per student. So then this net cost will be multiplied with student generation rate, and those are calculated by residential category, like single family, multifamily, mobile home. And the way they are calculated is basically the student addresses are matched with the property type in the property appraiser database to see how many kids are coming from each type of home. So compared to last study, you see that single family increased from 0.328 to 0.35, so it's about a 7% increase. Multifamily stayed pretty much the same, and then the mobile homes decreased about 10%. So then, again, taking the net cost that we showed, multiplying by the student generation rate, then gives us the full fee. So that ends up being about $8,900 for single family. That's about a 4% decrease than what you currently have. Multifamily is about 10-11% decrease, and then the mobile home is about almost 20% because generation rate decreased as well. This chart gives you a comparison to other jurisdictions, and it basically shows both their study dates, because they impacts what the fee is, as well as the adoption percentage, and the very last column is their calculated full fee, regardless of the adoption percentage at the time of it. So some of them are pretty old, like Miami-Dade is from 1990s, so that's part of it. But, and it goes from low to high. So these are the higher counties, and you were currently at about 9,300. You would be, with the calculated fee, about 8,900, and still in the higher half of the counties in terms of the impact fee amounts.
So can I ask a question? So if we're required by law to do these studies every few years, how is it Miami-Dade hasn't done one since 1995?
Yeah, they are basically.
And how do we get that schedule?
Yeah, I think the answer is, I mean, they can be challenged, and that would be a grounds for being challenged. But when the rate is so low, like 2,500, when everybody else is in 10,000s or 5,000,
okay.
Nobody. Yeah.
Got it.
Nobody wants to chance it.
No.
As far as the next step, today we are here to answer any questions, and then I think staff is looking for the approval of final technical report, and then it moves to board, county commission.
Yeah, obviously you wouldn't vote on anything today, it's a workshop, but if everything is acceptable, then it would go to the next board agenda for a recommendation to the county commission. I actually, during the meeting, was in contact with the county attorney, and as long as the school board makes a recommendation at that next meeting, then it would probably be on the September 10th Board of County Commissioners agenda. And Megan and Steve are available to come do a presentation to the county commission.
And when would it then take effect for the county?
Well, there's no, because it's a decrease, there's no waiting period. If it's an
Right.
increase, there's a, 90 days waiting period. So basically, it could go into effect immediately.
Anybody have any questions, comments? You have any questions or comments?
I'm still shocked that it went down.
Yeah, me too.
I think the impact of that 2016 legislation, and the lack of current data for the county basically was.
And so when you did your capital plan, does it take into account these reduced impact fees?
We have reduced it slightly. I think we'll have to kind of monitor that over the next couple of years. Of course, it's very dependent on the market as well. So, I think our estimate has been fairly conservative. We actually have collected more than we've said that we were collecting in the last couple of capital plans. So, I pulled it down conservatively.
Okay.
But of course, we will keep watching it for the market as well.
I think we talked about it last time, and there's some, at least thought that the volume, the number will catch up, so it's not going to be as devastating.
As long
It's like
as
$1 million and change hit.
As long as the market keeps going, which,
Okay.
is always.
Thank you.
We expected it to go up, just so you know. So very disappointed in you.
But the upside is you are building it lower, so that's a good news.
So now we'll just have to keep those costs down. All right, thank you.
Tense.
All right, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, maybe 10-minute break. So we'll be back at 3:10, we'll say. .04, our budget review, Mr. Ward.
Good
You
afternoon.
got 30 minutes.
Or 30 whole minutes. Actually, today is going to be pretty brief as far as my presentation. One of the key things that's happened is we've gotten a lot clearer picture of the end of last year, which is very important with the district and the state that it has been for a number of years. When you have such a small fund balance and a small availability of error, you have to really look and see what your ending balances are that are rolling into your next year balances. It becomes very important for you to start making a lot of decisions on the future year. So just real quick, we have our 2018 audited numbers here, and the first column is the 2019 preliminary, and you see it at the standard structure of the financial report. You got your revenues broken out, your expenditures broken out, your other financing sources, and then your ending fund balance. A couple of quick things to note on here is that revenues last year did go up, expenditures also went up. A lot of that has to do with growth. And if you'll look at the transfers in, which is mainly the transfers from the capital program to cover those needs that are in our operational grant that are allowed by law, by statute. So the bottom number is the ending fund balance, and you can see that the ending fund balance is up $3.2 million over the prior year. This is all stuff from last year's actual numbers, so we're not talking about next year's budget yet. We're just talking about the beginning of the picture. We wanted to also go over the fund balances in a little bit more detail, and the reason why is because there's always that question about the financial condition ratio, where it is and where it should be. And so I thought it was important that we talk about that for a minute so that you guys could have a clear understanding about what actually goes into that calculation. So, and according to GASB, there's 5 different categories of fund balances. We don't have all 5 of them here, but these are the 3 that we mainly use. We have non-spendable, we have restricted, assigned, and then everything else, which is the unassigned. The non-spendable is exactly what it sounds like. It's inventory and other items that you couldn't pay somebody in inventory. You can't take milk out of the kitchen and go pay for someone. So you can't spend that, so it's already restricted for that purpose. The other one is the state categorical carryover programs. These are restricted by the state through the FEFP program, and they're not allowed to be spent on general operating issues. They have to be spent according to the way that they were allocated to us. So those are restricted by the state. And then we haven't assigned the 2019 yet, but our assignments are our purchase orders from the prior year that we allow to roll over into the current year because we still want to allow them to purchase what they were going to order. So we pull that out of the unassigned and we put that in assigned. That assigned gets added to your unassigned fund balance for the determining of that financial condition ratio. So you divide your total revenues, which for 2019 was $330 million. You would divide that by your unassigned amount or your assigned amount if you had any to come up with your financial ratio. So our financial condition ratio is 4% at this point in time. We still are making a couple of adjustments, but a lot better picture than what we had a couple of months ago when we had this conversation about trying to get our fund balance back up. Now, a couple of things have happened, and I want to reiterate that some of that was one-time funding. Over $1.5 million was one time. We had some federal grants. We had the Restart grant, which was related to the storm. We had student displacement grant, which was related to storms elsewhere, and had students come here. These were one-time reimbursements from the federal government, and there wasn't any expenditure associated with them when we received the funding. The expenditures were in the past. So they did add to or increase our fund balance in the current year, but they were one-time, they're non-reoccurring. So I would caution anybody about making any kind of long-term financial decision off of a one-time revenue, obviously. We also did receive some of our FEMA money from the state, but we're still waiting on a lot of the other funding to come back. So last year, let's just talk about some of the financial highlights and review. For the year ending June 30th, 2018, Lake County Schools had the lowest financial condition ratio of all 67 school districts. I'm going to say that one more time because that caught me by surprise. When I saw the list of everybody's fund balances, that was the first time it hit me that we were the lowest county in the state. So I wanted everybody, and this is 2018, yes ma'am. We don't have the numbers for 2019 yet. So for the year ending June 30th, 2018, Lake County Schools had the lowest financial condition ratio of all 67 school districts.
So what do you attribute that to?
Just a low fund balance, expenditures exceeding revenues, and just, thank you. 62nd in funding. Yeah, it definitely has a lot of contribution to that. The district reduced staff at both the district and school levels at the beginning of the 2018-19 year. This is the second year in a row that there were some reductions. And those decisions were made long before I got here, so I'm not taking any credit for that. That was prior to me.
Superintendent,
Exactly.
How much have you reduced the district expense over the last 2 years since you came here?
So the total reduction for the past 2 years, it totaled $7.7 million. That was a little over $5 million year one in salary reductions, and then a little over $2 million this past in 18-19.
That's the whole district, right?
That's the whole district, yes.
Like, we think of districts sometimes as just administrative district.
That is all.
That includes schools and departments. Yes. Okay. So for the 2018-19 fiscal year, this is not any news to anybody, the district received a 47-cent increase to the base student allocation, the smallest increase during an improving economy since 2002. 2002, there was actually a cut in an improving economy, and I have never seen that any time before, but I only started in 2004. So again, you're starting at the lowest county in the state, and you are getting one of the lowest increases in modern history of education. For the 2018-19 fiscal year, the district received federal grants to offset prior year costs to reopen schools after Hurricane Irma, educate displaced students from Hurricane Maria, and the two grants alone was a one-time increase in funding of $1.4 million. So that was really the only positive news that I had out of the picture here. So what did happen last year that's other positive? The district did provide an increase in pay to both classified instructional employee units. It increased the board's contribution to the Employee Insurance Trust Fund in order to begin restoring its financial health. And it increased its unreserved fund balance by $3.8 million, and it increased the district financial condition ratio to a 4%, the board policy level of 4%. Able to maintain its district's B district grade from the state, earning 12 more points higher than the 631 points we earned during 2008. So not only were cuts made, not only were funding reduced or at a minimum, but overall, the district still continue to hold on to its performance and have a slight improvement.
Thank you.
And so that's really what I had to.
Teachers.
Yes, and that's really what I want to talk about today briefly. We are working still on next year's budget. We have a little bit clearer picture of the beginning numbers so we can work through and continue to work on our budget. We are looking at a financial condition ratio right now that we calculate out for next year at about 3.25. I know that that's going down, but we're still looking at, the budget to see where we can look at the budget. I have a budget document I'm working on that's comprehensive, goes through a lot of information at the school level and at the department level. I hope to have that out in the next couple of weeks.
I just wanted to request that. Put your mic on. Sorry, I wanted to request that we provide our science. I feel like our science departments are needing some sort of boost, like for supplies, science supplies, and science, potentially either microscopes or equipment or equipment refreshes. I know in the past we've done a categorical for robotics, and we actually seem to be doing pretty well.
Well, or it's /STEM, so schools can then choose to use that money for science programs or supplies such as those.
Right.
Especially because that was the origination of that categorical, if you will, was to kind of help schools get jump started. All these schools wanted to start a robotics program. And they were all writing the exact same grant to the Ed Foundation, so then we said, okay, well, let's just fund it so everybody, if they want to do that, they can do that. But now many of these programs are off the ground already, and I think they're starting to shift the funding away from the, more into the STEM categories. And
Right. I don't think we're doing bad at the elementary. I'm more concerned about middle and high, and I'm not.
Well, they're all asking for donations and for, fees,
Right.
$10
There is
for
a
this
lot
teacher,
of-
$15
But
for
when
that
I
teacher.
add up $10 for science lab, even amongst all the kids, that's
Yeah.
not, it.
No.
Right. It's not going to buy one microscope.
So
Oh.
my question, piggyback on that one, is I guess do schools ever use their discretionary budgets to supplement these classrooms, or they say, oh, sorry, teacher, you get your $150 of lead money, and obviously $150 is not going to go very far when you got science lab, right? But
Yes, I'm sure the schools provide funding for. It's limited, obviously, so they can't do everything that's been asked for, but they have to make a decision on where they are going to spend the funding to add the equipment, et cetera, that they need in their classrooms.
I guess what I'm saying is, well, I was significant. I had Mr. Pettit, which was an amazing teacher, and he was the superintendent of schools, and the labs we did were awesome. Like, they were known for blowing the roof. And that really was motivational for me becoming a scientist. And I feel like our labs are falling behind now. I feel like the basic science labs, the core, needs some help.
Well,
more focus.
And I've heard from some high school
Science
teachers in science as well that their main complaint is that they're having to take their own money to go out to buy the things they need to be able to do dissections and things in the classroom. So they're lacking funding. But some of that also is handled by the principal, how much funding they get. So, I mean, maybe as in your categorical lineup there you was talking about earlier, maybe we have to sit there and say, okay, this will be specifically used just for science, for their labs, so that the principal has to keep their hands off of it.
I would just be cautious about if we don't have money to add to them, taking other money, because you're taking away flexibility at the site level.
And I can, go ahead. Mr. Ward and I met this morning for a couple of hours, and we were talking about how the legislature will claim to fund education better, but in reality, they just took it from one pot and put it into another pot. And so
Exactly.
they keep giving us more money, but it's not more money, it's just restricted or unrestricted. It's never unrestricted, but it's just restricted to certain things. So I think the same thing. You might have one year where you need to replace your science equipment, but the next year you're going to replace some band instruments. So I would hate to,
Right.
for the restrictive piece of that, to take away some of their decision-making, because we know how that feels sitting here. What would we do with $4.2 million of best and brightest money, right? We could, if they would just give it to us, we could do it, but they're giving it to us with contingencies. So I don't like the idea of restricting the funding.
But each of the schools has a SAC committee. I'm going to speak to the same thing. With that allocation, I think that we have to empower the SAC committee that approves the budget at the school level. But I also would encourage teachers to utilize, I mentioned this from the dais the other night, that utilize Apple Mart. But also, if you get information to Carmen about what they need, she's pretty good at getting that word out. So we've got some outside partners, but I, like Stephanie, am not inclined to micromanage. We've got enough to say grace over the school budget, but I do think the SAC committee that's empowered should look at the overall needs. That's what the intent is.
Yeah.
And if they need help, then certainly, I know, Scott, you'd be more than willing.
But the question,
But it's not happening. And at some point, I mean,
Well, how do you say it's not happening? They have, all of them have SAC committees.
no, but the question is, I don't think they're approving the budgets. That's
And
the
I don't think the
principal-
teachers know that they can even go to the SAC committee, like I do. I think that's accurate.
That's not happening. What's happening
some
is the
places.
principal's got their budget, and I'm not gonna say this is everywhere, all right, because that's unfair. But in places, principals get their budget, they see the bottom line, and then they hold on to this money for whatever, for projects that, of course, they deem important, and we trust them to decide what's important for their schools, right? I mean, that's why we've employed them to hold that job. But then if you're the PE teacher and you say, I need new basketballs, and you go to the principal and you say, I need a couple $100 for new basketballs, and then the principal says, we don't have that. We don't have a couple $100 to give you. But then when we see at the end of the year, they've got $25,000 to carry forward, that makes me go crazy.
I get that part.
And so something is disconnecting here where I'm not sure
I'm not
how
sure how
teachers get in
much.
line to get their priorities
Right.
stated.
Or
Whether
if
it's
they
for
even know
Microsoft.
to. I really don't think some teachers even know that the SAC committee exists. I know that sounds crazy, but
Right.
I'm telling you that
I mean, my very first year, I went to a science teacher. I said, how much do you get per year for your class? And he said $250, which is the lead money that every single teacher
Right.
gets. And that means he just didn't know, like, that
Right.
there was if there was more funds available, he had no idea. And so we're running and some schools do have a $10 fee per kid, but that's not gonna cover it. Like, we're just falling further and further behind, and I'm not seeing anything move forward on science.
Isn't that
in the middle
allocation to
and
the
high.
schools like $3-point-something million that's spread out the 43 schools?
Which allocation is that? The School Advisory Council?
So I was thinking the SAC.
They changed that funding structure a few years back. It used to be a guaranteed $10 per student, and they funded that every year. It was in categorical. A lot of that's gone away. It's no longer $10. It's basically whatever teacher lead money is left over at the end of the year and a small pot of money that they appropriate, and it's no longer $10. It's nowhere near as what it used to be as far as the dollar amount per school.
What is the budget that each school gets?
They get, their basic, and it depends on which type of school they are, their basic is like $75 per student for like overall general purchasing expenditures for their school. Some of the other ones are more depending on high school. High schools get more, middle schools get a little bit more, elementary less. But, and then there's a lot of things like they get for athletics, they get for band, they get for, printing, they get for, there's a lot of
Custodial supplies, substitute budget, call-out system is factored out. So previous CFO generation, right? I sometimes ask, I'd say, so what do these school discretionary budgets look like? How are school, I recognize that I'm not going to go in and tell them how to spend it, right? That's not our business as a board to tell you how to spend that. So that's the preface. But I just want to know what they're spending it on. Do you all have a submitted budget from each school? No, not really. Do you all collect school discretionary budgets now?
It is the part that we give to them for the general portion is discretionary. It's at their discretion. And
So
I will say, depending on the size of the school and which school it is, and what type of school it is, there's a lot of money being rolled over into the next year.
Right.
We allow them to hold on to their unspent money and roll it into the subsequent year, and they're given until the end of December to spend that. So that rollover continues to roll over year after year. So some schools, when they're saying, I've been told that we don't have any money, they actually did have money. Now, they may not have.
Right.
They may be saving it for a specific purpose.
Something else, right.
Right, and with a different intent. And a couple weeks ago, I believe I sent all the board members a copy of what those funds that are being rolled over look like.
I guess I'd like to see some encouragement, and I don't know how this looks, but to print kind of a reminder to principals and say, not all classrooms have equal needs, right? I mean, if I am teaching in a traditional classroom versus if I'm teaching now this elective, or my equipment is so much more expensive in science or band or so on and so forth, I need a piece of that school discretionary budget that you all are getting, but I just don't think they're able to get in line for that, and ask for that.
And I get the sentiment of not wanting to dedicate, like, oh, God, would I love to touch that money. But at the same time, I want to move forward with some goals, and I feel like that's been a priority of the board, the STEM, and science itself is not getting, and math is cheap, generally. Usually you have a
Students
book.
tend to bring their own calculators.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
How much does a protractor cost?
Right. So, but an electrophoresis machine,
I don't even know what that is.
but I did get a request for one from a science teacher. So
You have to watch NCIS.
We have the ability now to pull all of the requests on Donors Choose, and it's interesting to see what the teachers are asking for. Not all of them. A lot of them are asking for a lot of good stuff, but there's some things on there that you kind of scratch your head a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I wonder how often the answer is, oh, well, go do a fundraiser. Go do a walkathon and raise money for PE equipment. Go sell cookie dough. Go sell magazines. Go sell candles. Go sell, you name it. Go sell candy bars. But not during school hours. Sell it, outside. The list just goes on and on and on. But then you're looking at schools that are rolling over thousands and thousands of dollars, or where parents are paying fees for some of these programs going, well, what'd that go to?
Well, you have elementary parents that are being given a list to go get things. I got hit by a relative about her grandson and said, by the time my daughter buys all this stuff, that's $100. So if you take each student, 18 students, that's $1,800 that is being added to that classroom for supplies. So, and they're saying, well, where's our tax dollars going? And this is where I get to explain to them, when they tell you in Tallahassee that they're giving more money, they're just shifting it. It's the same budget, they're just shifting it, that's all. So, yeah.
So how do teachers get a kind of a spotlight? Where do they get to take the number to ask for money? Does that,
Handle that site. This is up to the principal.
Okay.
So unless we really say it's a priority at the district level.
But we're not going to tell a principal how to spend their budget, because that's the school's budget to decide how to spend.
You have to be extremely careful, because if you give them any indication that you might actually pull money back if they don't spend it, trust me, they will spend it.
Yeah,
Right.
That's right.
I know.
On
we used
things
to do
that
that
they
all the
don't
time,
need.
and-
Just as a
Yeah.
thought, I think that since I've been on the board, that we have such a focus on the academic performance of our kids. That's what we look for, great leaders. And I don't think anyone can be great at everything. And so maybe that budgeting business component, maybe we could give some support. That's just my thought about it.
Mr. Ward and I talked about that I think we have so many new leaders that one of the things that, again, I've talked about him doing is kind of doing some one-on-one sessions, walking them through some of their, here is your budget, because we had some that said, oh, I have money for printing, because during the era of, we don't have any money for printing, well, you've got a good bit of money sitting right here you haven't used. Oh, I didn't know that was there. So we talked about starting this year with some individual meetings, going through their budgets and doing some more intensive training and kind of talking to them about what some of the priorities need to be. So I know he's committed to that. I've been a little busy lately, just trying to clean up the previous school year and get us on a better footing for this coming year. So, but I know that he's committed to doing that, and we do intend on doing that.
I know that when I came on the board 6 years ago, we had some of the schools in Leesburg particularly that didn't have a refresh on their computers for like 5 or 6 years. And our superintendent was telling me that she put computer upgrades as part of that money that she had to budget, and then she would pay as you go. And so having that understanding of being able to forecast, set money aside, there's some real, that's not something that just comes to you. I think it's taught. And I do think that maybe it's a great initiative.
Anyone else got anything?
Thank you
All right.
for your time today. Mr. Ward, thank you for your time today.
Capital plan.
I meant with me. I meant earlier today.
This time was special.
That's right. We talked about it 2 hours and they were lying. It's very-
I'm going to try to be even quicker on this one. This is just an update from our July 8th workshop. At that workshop, Mr. Dodd specifically asked me to look at Grassy Lake Elementary School and the possibility of adding the wing, the planned addition on there. And once we went back and we looked at those numbers, we realized that we would have to do it almost immediately in order to accommodate the number of students that we're projecting with the portables and get that addition in. We'd literally have to do it this year. We don't have funding for that. So what we did do is we went back and we talked to the Pinecrest Tavares people. We did some research with the city, and we realized that they have a building permit that's ready to be picked up. They are in pretty good shape to go ahead and open in August of 2020. So we are going to take them at their word that they're going to open in August of 2020. And so what I've done in this capital plan is moved the money that would have gone to that Tavares Relief School to a Mineola area relief school. And that is programmed for the same time period. It's funded in 2022-23, and that's, yeah. And that's for the elementary portion, because that's basically how much money we had, and that's really where we need the relief. If you saw from that last presentation, we have a fairly good amount of middle school capacity, and of course the K-8s are adding that at the charter level. So I'm not as worried about middle school as I am about elementary school, especially in the South County. So we are proposing funding the elementary school portion of that Mineola area relief school, and then coming back and trying to build the middle school portion of a K-8 in a year or two afterwards. Hopefully we would be able to get that funding. If not, hopefully by the time that kindergarten cohort graduates from 5th grade, they can go into the 6th grade. Otherwise, those students would move on to a regular middle school. So that's our plan. That's the change. We looked at trying to bring that school forward because we are starting to get really concerned about Grassy Lake and the situation there. But unfortunately, we don't quite have the funding in the plan in order to be able to move that forward. And the other thing too is that if you remember from our school concurrency interlocal agreement, then basically once we have that in that 3rd year of the plan, we are telling the developers that we are going to build that and they can rely on that capacity. And I would hate to make that commitment and then not be able to do that. So, we want to keep it in the 4th year, but our goal is that we would be able to, perhaps if we are required to, do proportionate share mitigation agreements or something that would be able to get some funding a little bit earlier and be able to move that. But for right now, I think it's more appropriate to leave it in the 4th year of the plan.
Is there any concern if, the Pinecrest Tavares opens and, I don't know what their capacity, I don't recall that, but then they only get, a handful of students showing up, right? I mean, sometimes they don't attract as many as they thought they were going to attract on the first day, 4 Corners, for example. So capacity exists, but nobody wants to use that capacity.
Sure.
And now is that going to leave Tavares in a bind? What are we going to do in that situation?
In that situation, we're gonna deal with it the same way we do everything else. We're gonna be creative and come up with some options as quickly as we can.
We can't zone kids to, like, we couldn't.
No.
Right? Because it's a charter.
Right, we cannot zone kids to a charter school.
That's conversions.
That's a conversion charter.
Right, that's what, I guess that's what I was
Right.
thinking of. Yeah.
Well, they've got the space, right? No, there wasn't, my question is not any concern about will they take the student, because they've got the space for the student. The question is, will the students show up, right? I mean, I don't know, do we have more, current numbers on what Four Corners is up to now?
We have not gotten actual enrollment numbers from them. We just get what was in Skyward. And so, all I have is what they had in Skyward. What's that?
What's that much?
Is it that much?
No, the number that we got from Skyward on Monday was 183.
That's what
For what? I'm sorry, for what?
For the Pinecrest Four Corners School.
Okay.
We have not, like I said, we have not gotten solid enrollment numbers directly from them in the warm body count that we get from all of our schools.
But we
and
just,
so-
aren't they the ones we just approved for seventh grade?
Yes.
So some of those warm bodies were seventh graders?
We don't have a warm body count. What we have is the number that we were able to pull from Skyward, and that number was 183 on Monday.
But granted, they didn't have the CO yet, right? So,
But they did
so
not
so
have
that
the
wouldn't have
CO
been in
on,
the warm body count. So.
Right. So Monday
But-
we'll have another warm body count, and
That's how many went to SeaWorld?
That's right.
That's what you said.
That is the funniest story.
I was wondering what you said.
so Monday we'll hopefully have better numbers
They
for
didn't
them.
have their C of O,
But
so they
I'm,
took
I,
kids to SeaWorld.
so Tavares, the situation is, I think even a little bit of relief
Okay.
for Tavares will help. You
Okay.
know, if 30 students go, 40 students, 50 students, that's really gonna help that situation at Tavares.
Yeah.
So, it's not like the South County where the growth is so fast that, that basically, I think that even just a little bit of relief there will basically help us through that year.
Yeah. This is the more desperate situation.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I just as a gut feeling, because I I grew up next to it, that where the school's going to open. I mean, I think that the people will be receptive in the neighborhoods around there.
I think so. I mean, there is a little bit of growth, and actually where they're going is basically where there's a couple of growth areas in Tavares. There's off of 19, kind of Dead River Road, and then there's really right there.
Off Alfred.
So, I think even if they pick up that growth that's really right there, then that will definitely help us. Otherwise, we sent this information to the local governments on August 1st, so that's why we wanted to go ahead and make it sure that, it was said publicly, the change that we had made. And we have it on the board agenda, or will be on the board agenda for September 9th, and then submitted to DOE on October 1st. So that's all I have, unless there's any other questions.
The only thing I had was about the Mineola relief. And I know we're waiting till the next year and not going to open it to the 28 year. But, on that middle school.
Oh, right.
But, I mean, I've seen that, say, $4 million, what we estimate, and the next thing you know, it's 6 or 7 or 8 million.
That is
Where if
not
we
the
did it-
full, that's partial funding for the middle school. That is not full funding.
Oh, okay, so
that
that's
will
just
really-
getting it
it'll be-
started.
Yes, it's just getting started, so that will really be dependent on us getting the full funding for the remaining. And I would estimate that really is gonna be closer to probably 12 million. It's basically the gym, and depending on how we build the middle school portion of it, then it would be, perhaps, depending on what kind of structure we do, either we build out the shell and then we come back through and we finish it out. for the middle school, or if we have to build another wing, basically that will impact that cost. And then really the gym is the biggest part of the middle school. So, but I really expect it to be closer to 12 or maybe even a little bit more. So that's just partial funding for that.
Okay. Well, like I say, it's just like what happened at Sawgrass Bay after they built that school and they went back and built the wing. They had to take all that brick off the wall and everything. I'd rather us look into, let's do it one time, be done with it.
Sure. Well, the most cost-effective way, if we can afford to do it, would be if we go to a 3-story.
When they built Sawgrass Bay,
Which school are you talking
oh, the Mineola Relief
Mineola,
on the
doing
middle school?
the K-8 or the 6-8
about? Want to
portion.
do it as a K-8 all at one time?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is if
Money.
you do that, yeah.
Well,
it's
the
the
funding.
We don't have enough money to do that.
So,
Well, we-
but the most cost-effective way is if, like, on our Four Corners K-8, we build a 3-story, and basically the 3rd story is the 6-8 portion of it. Then essentially you could build the shell like we did at Sorrento, and then we go back in, we finish it out when we're ready to go ahead and when we have the funding for that. So that's one thing to look at, or it could be a separate wing, or it could be something, maybe it is just an addition that basically goes on.
But it's more cost-effective to go up than create more wings.
But we will definitely try to be as cost-effective as we can because, as we discussed in that last presentation, we have that consideration from the state of trying to build within their costs.
Okay.
Or what they think our cost should be.
That's right.
Right.
More accurate.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you for
You
your
got
time.
anything? It's your area down there.
Nope, it's good.
All right, great.
As good as it can be.
Board member comments, Mr. Mathias.
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, was that it? I thought we had one more.
I'm good.
Nope, that's it. Good.
No, I will wait.
All right. Thank y'all for Monday night. Thank you, Christy, for filling in.
Oh.
Superintendent. We're adjourned.